how Ken and I discussed it, and because it is his last meeting, he left the option up to me whether I wanted to host or if he was going to host. I decided that he should get to sit back and enjoy the conversation rather than needing to host. So I will be running the meeting and Ken will get to enjoy. Before we get started, I do want to congratulate Ken. I'd like to say what a pleasure it's been to serve on OSAC with Ken, to be our trustee leader ever since I've been on the board, to be an amazing mentor and really an incredible advocate for open space. We can't say thank you for your service to the town because it's just continuing, but thank you, I think, from the bottom of my heart for everything you've done for OSAC, and especially for, me, bringing me up to speed and helping me understand our business. So I really appreciate that. So thanks, Ken.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So I guess I'd like to make a toast to Ken. Thank you, Ken.
Congratulations.
Best of luck.
Cheers.
Yay,
For the record, it's sparkling cider, right?
Yep, just sparkling cider. Yes.
Yeah, officially for the record.
Good stuff.
Do you have anything you want to say before we get started?
So I think just short and sweet, I appreciate all my time on OSAC. I think if there's ever a time for me to be rolling off, I feel most comfortable doing it now because we have a very passionate group of people here, and it's nice to see so much engagement. I know my first 2-3 years on the committee, it was hard to just get people to show up. So it's great to see everybody who's here, and I would say just continue to push. There's going to be a lot of roadblocks just because this is local government, and things don't move fast all the time, and don't get frustrated, and continue to try to get involved with the board as much as possible, because I think that's where we kind of turn the corner with getting more of our stuff done. Is the more we got in front of the board, the more we got in their minds, and the more they started pushing for the same things we were. So good luck to everybody.
All righty. Well, thank you, Ken.
Yes.
Does anyone else want to say anything before we get started?
I just want to echo your thoughts, Ryan, and that I think I haven't been on open space since the beginning of time, but since I've been here, Ken has been quite an impressive leader and has done some really great things for the town and for this committee and really turned it around, I believe. So I know that I'm extremely appreciative, and I believe that our community members are as well. So we're super excited to have you continue to lead our town.
You guys are making me cry.
All right. Well, thanks, Ken. Enjoy tonight. Sit back and relax. But on that note, I do need a secretary. So do I have a volunteer?
I can knock that one out.
All right,
My last
cool.
one.
All right, well, you don't need to.
No.
All right, cool. Well, thank you. So let's do roll call. Just go around and introduce yourselves, please. Ryan Welch, Vice Chair.
Joel White, committee member.
Kate Senecal, committee member.
I guess.
Yeah.
That's
Marcy Strass, officially a committee member, finally appointed.
Thank you.
Ken Liz, chair.
Vanessa Hetzel, committee member.
Tracy Collar, committee member.
Allison James, town staff liaison.
Mark Lace's town board liaison.
Okay, and Kevin Franz told us he couldn't be here tonight. We expect Sean. We think he's just running a little bit late, so hopefully we'll see him soon. Before we get into the agenda, are there any corrections anyone would like to make to the agenda this evening? Okay, good. Well, let's get into it. We do have a lot tonight. It should be a lot of good discussion. We'll try our best not to be here till midnight. I think we've got it in us, but we'll make sure we have all the discussion we need to have tonight. So, we do have a lot we want to get done. Well, Peter, do you want to say anything for public comment? Okay, well, welcome. Glad you're here. Okay, let's get right into the property discussions. So for CenturyLink, obviously there's a lot to discuss here. We thought we were maybe going to need to discuss the oil and gas drilling permit. I think we've probably all been seeing what happened with our town over the last, gosh, it's only been, what, like 4 days or, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how fast all of that has gone. Really commend the town for being proactive. Thank you, Mark, and the other trustees for all the work of being, on this. And it really was fun to see our town come together. So thank you for that. our work isn't over, obviously, because there's still some other sites and, you know, where they want to drill under the Rocky Flat site, which I think we all agree that that may not be the best idea, but we just need to be proactive as a town. I think from thinking about this, if people come to us and say, what can we do? I think we should be directing them to the communication that the board has put out on, you know, on the front page of the website on how the community members can be active and getting their voice out and following that and just being engaged in the process that the board has put forth. I don't know if there's much else we can do as a group, but if there is something that we come up with and we have ideas, we should definitely be circulating that and figuring out what we can do. So any comment on that one?
Just an update. So the town board is going to be having a special meeting on Friday night at 7 p.m. So the agenda just came out about half hour ago.
Okay.
And the purpose of that meeting is to discuss, because right now they've withdrawn the application for drilling in town, but there is still an application related to drilling underneath Rocky Flats from Highway 93. So that meeting is to discuss the town's position on oil and gas development under Rocky Flats in general.
Okay, thank you. The other one about CenturyLink is actually a pretty interesting thing to discuss. So we had a meeting, I believe it was on the 30th of October with the Trust for Public Land. Tracy was there, I was there, Mark and Allison were there, Justin Spring was there along with Patrick Hammer and Town Manager Magley. The gist of that was that the time is hot on CenturyLink. Maybe not the time is hot, but we would like to aggressively pursue that property. Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he feels very strongly that it's kind of now or never. Maybe that's too strong, but we should be aggressive about pursuing that because we've been putting on the top of our list, but maybe haven't been as aggressive as we would like to be. And with the help of Justin, we think we have an opportunity to, maybe there's a crack in that armor. The thing about it that we need to discuss is financially, this would pretty much take every dollar out of the open space fund. There's also a $6 million bond that we could raise that we would probably need to raise. And if we did that, essentially means the funds for any open space acquisition would essentially be tied up for the next 9 to 10 years. And
I'm sorry, but is the property for sale?
no.
That's the other problem.
Well, we're working on that.
Okay.
If they said they were willing to negotiate, would we be in a spot where we would recommend, yes, that is absolutely the best use of our open space funds, or should we hold it and try to do other smaller things? So that is a piece that we should discuss.
I think one of the problems also, just kind of going back over the past couple of years, is getting the attention of CenturyLink and Level 3, and I think now we have their attention. Kind of the blessing in all of this oil and gas, these issues that came up with the Highlands drilling permit is that CenturyLink told us that they had no idea that Highlands was planning on doing this, and that's one of the kind of the weird things about oil and gas law and mineral rights, and you can just go in even if the surface owner objects. And so this may motivate CenturyLink. I'm hopeful that it will, and get them to think again about, okay, maybe it makes sense to actually sell this to the town so we can preserve it as open space and then ensure that it doesn't get developed for oil and gas uses.
And so a note on it, Trust for Public Land, if you're not aware, it's an awesome organization that we've been very fortunate to hopefully collaborate with. So Justin Spring has touched base with the CenturyLink, what would you call it, their contact, whomever it is, and he expects to hear back shortly. So that would be, when there's talk of it not being for sale, that's where Trust for Public Land steps in to see how this can benefit both that organization and the town of Superior.
Do we have an evaluation on that property? We don't. Okay. So that would be one of the first steps.
When you say evaluation, as far as?
Well, we're talking about that we don't have enough money and committing money to it.
Oh, evaluation. Sorry.
Evaluation.
Well, we would also, this is where we would find partnerships with Boulder County and potentially, GOCO, Greater Colorado Outdoors, for other funding. I mean, when we submit to Boulder County every year that we say this is our number one priority, they always come back and say, yes, we're interested in partnering with you on that land. So we think we could figure out the financials. The question.
And that is where TPL also steps in. So they have a long history working nationwide with private and public organizations. So it wouldn't just be BOCO, it could be Jeffco, as well as many other private entities around here.
And even in the TPO presentation they did, they even funded part of it up front to help off, because the town didn't have enough money for the one property, the case he showed. They fronted some of it until the town could pay him back. So this is their job, is to figure out how to finance this kind of land. And so
I think we should take advantage of the momentum we have going. I know there's another property out there called Town 15 that we're interested in.
But we already own that, so that's not.
But the town owns that, exactly.
Yeah.
But turning it into public open space.
We just wouldn't have to worry about the financing side of it right now.
Right.
Now, one thing that, if you guys remember back to Justin's presentation when he was here and gave us the example of what they had done up in Colorado Springs, they talked about what really tipped that over the edge was the community engagement. They even did a community fundraising type portion of it. And the fundraising itself was quite small comparatively, but if I'm remembering correctly, he said that really kind of tipped the scales. I think if there's ever a time we can kind of capitalize on that, now is probably that time as well. So
I totally agree. And he gave another great example at that meeting of Telluride and all of the open space surrounding Telluride, and that they got very wealthy private donors to chip in for that too. So just plenty of ideas that Trust for Public Land has that we don't have, but we can use now to our advantage.
So back to your question, Ryan, I think you're asking whether we all felt it was important, whether we put all of our eggs into this one basket. My vote is yes. We have had this number one on our agenda forever, right? If strike while the iron's hot, right? I mean, this, as Mark has pointed out, has given us an opportunity we haven't had up until this point. Visibility and the fact that this may alleviate, CenturyLink's potential PR issues if they don't do something. I think, yes, my vote is yes, to answer your question.
We'll also have board support for this.
I think you'll have the entire town of Superior support.
Exactly.
I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. We don't even really should have to discuss it. So.
Exactly.
But and the whole point of bringing it up is just want to make sure that everybody agrees. And I don't know if we should actually make a motion to make a recommendation to the board, actually write this up and Mark, maybe that's a question for you. Would a recommendation from this group specifically about this help the cause, do you think?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay. So
I think under the circumstances, I've already made the recommendation to the board, and I've been trying to lobby support to go forward, but actually having an official motion from MOSAC saying we recommend, like under the circumstances of, what just transpired, to aggressively pursue acquiring this parcel once and for all.
I mean, I'm of the mindset that even if we hadn't have gone through the oil and gas, saga that we've had in the last week, I still would have emptied the pockets for that property. I mean, that's the one we wanted. That's the one everybody in the town uses more than any of the rest of them. So to me, even a month ago, if you asked me if we could buy that property, would we? I'd say yes, absolutely. And even more so now, because I think we have other impacts that we could potentially mitigate by, having it designated as open space. I'm sure there's some laws and regulations around, town-owned property and surface rights and things like that. So I'm 100% behind it.
So the only question is different scenarios. Would they be willing to sell us both Boulder County and Jefferson County properties? Would they only be willing to sell Jefferson County? Would they only be willing to sell that one corner parcel that is the most obvious place for any now or future oil drilling to go? I think we need to explore any of those possibilities. Anything we can buy is a good thing.
And I think, I know from the discussion though, and Mark, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we want to go all in. We want it all.
If they'll let us, yeah.
Right, I mean, that's where we want to start, and then maybe we negotiate from there, but, not start small and then, only get a piece. Let's start big and see what we
Right,
can
you
do.
can work your way back.
In negotiation, you always ask for more,
Mhm.
so.
Well, since a
And-
motion does require a vote,
Do you mind if I interject
Oh,
there?
no, not at
I did
all.
want to touch on Joel's mention of mineral rights, and we did ask Justin that, and he said that they usually look at acquiring all mineral and water rights when they're able to, as well as the surface rights, but Trustee Lasis, you would be a much better person to ask about the mineral rights. The last thing I heard that was still in discussion, who owns the mineral rights to that parcel of CenturyLink? But it's nice to know that they do at least attempt to do that when possible.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing with all of this is, and this is with the whole horizontal directional drilling, is that, the mineral rights that Highlands Natural Resources was going to access wasn't actually underneath that property. So, those mineral rights are under Rocky Flats. So even if you had the mineral rights, I mean, I agree, I think to the extent that the mineral rights are available, just in general, I mean, I think it merits a discussion, with town council, as to like whether or not open space funds can be used to acquire mineral rights as well, to kind of prevent their development in town. It's just kind of a thing that I've been thinking about over the past couple days. Because I don't know who owns the mineral rights, and that's something that we're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
It's not an easy process, and, we need to get title work done and figure out all of that stuff. But to your point, Tracy, yes, to the extent that we can get both the surface rights and the mineral rights, we should.
And then if you don't mind, just one more point on that meeting. We did bring up, Ryan and I brought up other parcels that we had looked at, and we had hoped that Trust for Public Land would be able to work with us on. However, given that our funds are so limited, Ryan and I kind of left it, and everyone was in agreement that let's see what happens with CenturyLink first. And if that is a no-go, then we can then start to bring those other large item parcels to Trust for Public Land and see what they think. So hopefully everyone was in agreement with that, but since it's number one on our list, we felt pretty confident tabling those other ones and seeing what happens with CenturyLink first.
okay. So we need to craft a motion.
So I've been working on
All
that.
right, thank you, Ken.
OSAC recommends that the town board utilize the open space fund and associated bonding capacity to aggressively pursue the purchase of the CenturyLink property. Do we need anything else? Do we want anything else?
I guess the only question is, should we mention the mineral rights in there
He's talking property as a
and
whole.
investigate? I just don't know, because that might make it, like, if we couldn't get the mineral rights, does it change our recommendation of us wanting to purchase? We need to word that right if we're gonna put that in there.
I don't think we want to put anything in there. I think we just say we want to acquire the rights. We don't even know, CenturyLink may own them. It may also be that a farmer owns the mineral rights and his 16 kids have them, and so it's split up. I mean, that's what happens with mineral rights typically, is they're owned by a family, and then as it gets passed on, they get split to multiple different parties, and you'll see people that own fractions of percentages of mineral rights.
Okay.
So
Let's just go with property as a
Okay.
whole. I think legally, that's fine.
Okay, do you want me to reread it? OSAC recommends that the town board utilize the open space fund and associated bonding capacity to aggressively pursue the purchase of the CenturyLink property. So I could take out the open space fund and bonding capacity if we want to, because we're not mentioning partners.
Right, I'm wondering if you should add in partners, collaboration partners, or remove the fund and
No,
bonding.
I'd like adding, I think, my recommendation is we should add the partners in there,
Okay.
just because I think it shows that we've thought about the funding more than just our fund.
And any collaborating partners.
Open space fund and associated bonding capacity. Man, how do I squeeze that in there? I'm almost putting it in as a second sentence.
Could you just say, using available funds, the bonding capacity and partnerships?
Or you could just say through all means available,
Or
which includes bonding, everything,
Yeah.
you know? all means available.
explore everything.
I think it's important, though, to show that we've thought through the funding.
You could put it in
process.
parentheses.
Yeah, well, I
That's a
think,
good
Vanessa,
point
what you're
because-
saying is that we're willing to.
We're just all in. I mean, we're just saying we're all in, whatever it takes to get it.
Yeah, but they might
Through-
think that we, you know, haven't planned it, that maybe there isn't a way for it to happen.
Right, and they might not be aware of the bonds, especially for newer members. I mean, I think they are, but maybe they aren't, and they might not be aware of collaborating partners that are available. So I think it's helpful to list them all, even if it's in parentheses.
All right. OSAC recommends the town board utilize all means possible, such as the open space fund, associated bonding capacity, and collaborating partners to aggressively pursue the purchase of the CenturyLink property. Does that get to it?
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, does anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we, and actually, when I make a motion, do I need to read that, or just do I need to say?
You can say as read.
All right, so I make a motion that the board, OSAC board, will recommend to the board the recommendation that Ken just wrote.
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, cool. So that will change the rest of our discussion tonight, so that's good that we got that out early, so.
I do want to clarify, though, that everyone, I mean, I know a couple of people touched on it, Joel and Sean, but that everyone's totally in with draining our fund. I think that needs to be, we all need to be on board with
Yeah.
that, and I just don't want there to be any
Well,
question.
I didn't say it, but I am on board
Okay.
with that, for
Yeah,
sure.
I think a round robin would be great.
Mhm. Oh, yeah, so I guess, anyone who hasn't spoken?
I haven't spoken, I'm on board.
Yeah, I'm on board.
I'm on board.
All right, good.
And just, you know, for the record, I've already had conversations with most of the board members about that strategy, and that was actually before all of this happened with Highlands. So, you know, this isn't like a reactionary thing where we're saying like, oh my God, somebody's trying to develop it. We need to actually go out and aggressively acquire it. You know, we had a meeting with, you know, Justin and Tracy and, you know, Ryan was there, and so the board is well aware that this is top priority. So hopefully we can get it done.
Okay. So the next property from our last discussion was the Third Avenue, and what we really wanted to know was, before we started talking about that parcel, was just the feasibility of a river walk along there, and Allison was gonna help us out with that.
Yes, and what I have to bring back is that staff believes that due to cost and property owners, it is not feasible.
Okay.
There was also some of the approved FDP for Coal Creek, and that narrowing the channel for a walk on that other side was not feasible. And the Army Corps of Engineers and Urban Drainage Flood Control District were reached out to, and neither supported the changing of the banks. So that's what I had to bring back.
Okay. Okay. Any discussion there?
I mean, I'm not surprised by it.
Yeah.
When I've looked at it personally, it looked tight and it looked like property boundaries and things, but I think it was a unique idea. I think, you know, it would have been something that would have been pretty neat to implement, but tough.
So in terms of the feasibility on that Third Ave property, well, could you repeat what was said due to the owner cost, or?
Well, it wasn't specifically the Third Avenue property that I was supposed to be reporting back on.
No,
It
just
was
the
the
whole creek walk.
feasibility of the river walk and like all of the properties in conjunction and how that would look.
So the Riverwalk, probably no, but the Third Avenue is up in air, or has town staff talked with those property owners?
No, I mean, we haven't recommended that they talk to them. We wanted to understand the feasibility before we went into discussions with them. I mean, I think we should watch the property. I mean, it's not for sale currently.
Right.
The other lots in front are for sale to be developed.
Well, the reason that lot's not for sale is because it's in a flood zone. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say they would give it to the town, but my guess is that it would not be terribly developable as is. They would probably just leave it open as is. So it's just a matter of asking for an easement across that property if we were gonna do
Yeah.
a walk of some type.
I mean, I think if that property became available, I mean, it adds to town open space property back there.
Right,
It
and
wouldn't be a
honest-
high priority, but it would be,
Right.
it would add to the space we own back there.
It sure would, with the potential for a future Riverwalk if we so desired at some later point in time to go forward with it. I don't feel there's any harm in asking the current owner if they were willing to sell or have an easement through it, would they be willing? There's no harm in asking. They can just say no, it's just words. So my opinion is still to be proactive about it and still ask the questions of the property owner. Yeah, it's probably not feasible. Yeah, there's a lot to overcome at this point, even to put up, but in terms of just pure open space and whether other people can use it behind those properties, we can ask. There's no harm in asking. I mean,
If we got it initially, it would probably be open space. It wouldn't be just passive open space, I
Yeah,
imagine.
that's fine.
Yeah.
But at least it would be open space.
But I guess to your point about it not being developed, because it's in a floodplain,
I mean, you can develop anything anywhere. We obviously know that, right?
yeah, but, I mean, I don't know, I guess if our goal was to just add to the open space that's contingent to that, then I say, yeah, it kind of meets that, but I don't know that, I don't know. Like I said, when I've looked over that area, especially some of the private property, like right around the bridge, as you go there, I mean, there's signs, and it is narrow through there, so I don't know how we're ever gonna get around that.
So that is town-owned property behind those homes, correct? I think that's what you said last meeting.
Some of it is.
Except for one parcel. There is one parcel that is privately owned and that is rented out. So that would be the biggest hurdle, in my
I mean, the
opinion.
other thought I have there is that those lots that are being developed, those are pretty pricey developments from what I remember. And I'm almost wondering if part of the pitch is that we own the land behind. We're not gonna sell that, so you're gonna have this view.
Which is great. I'm saying, they own that on the other side of the creek though, too. It's both sides of the creek, that
Oh, that's
track
right, they do
919.
own both
So,
sides,
yeah,
right.
great. You have your backyard, but on the other side of the creek is also part of that land. So I'm saying, how about the other side?
So how about
I mean, it's
this?
all one parcel, but at least an easement for public use of the backside.
How about this? Since we plan to redo our property rankings early next year, would you be okay if we rolled that into our property rankings and then decided at that point whether or not we should talk to the owner, especially because I think that gives us time for CenturyLink to come back
Yeah.
with Justin, and if,
Oh,
if
by
that
no means
starts
is this a
moving-
priority. I mean, it's on the back burner
Yeah,
compared
but
to
I think that flows nicely into our procedure for early next year.
Yeah, that's fine.
So,
I just don't want it to be off the table.
Sure,
Because
sure.
it was recommended by staff that a creek walk is not feasible at this time.
sure. I agree.
Which is, I agree, that's fine at this time, but it still should, could be open space, so.
Okay. Any other discussion on that property? Okay. So Allison, the next property, the 76th parcel, did we ever hear back from the landowner?
The information that I was given was the owner is not willing to sell at this time.
Okay. Okay, well, at least we got a response. I mean, again, if we didn't have CenturyLink on the list, I think we might want to rethink that, but again, we can, maybe think about how we rank those properties over there. Maybe we don't rank 76 as a group, and maybe we rank them as a group, but we prioritize within the group or something when we work through that plan over there. But that again still falls in nicely to early on in the year of planning. So, okay. So the ecological survey. I think this will be an interesting discussion. So Allison did send it out earlier today. I did not have a chance to read it in as much depth as I would have liked.
Yeah, I haven't either.
Today. I know some people did and expressed some concern, so I think we should discuss that. So anyone who wants to start?
Well, I've got just overall questions. So for anyone who didn't read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, it was the same ecological group that actually did the work for the Zaharias developer right now who has the application in. So a lot of the way it was written was towards the way they did the work for the developer. A lot of writing is in ownership over the way the development was put forward. So the development was designed for X it wasn't a independent objective analysis. It was like, this is why we told the developer to do this. And there was probably some value in what they had written, but I think the whole reason why we put this forward was to try to get a sense of, from an independent view, Boulder County gave us kind of their risk assessment. So let's identify what those risks are and then have somebody tell us how to mitigate them. This was the developer. And again, the ecological group isn't the developer, but it's the people hired by the developer. And to me, it just wasn't at least what I was looking for.
And again, I didn't read it closely, so I need to go back and do that. So, but some of the questions I had were around wastewater. How should the design be done for wastewater? And then try to actually put a number on how big of a setback there should be from the reservoir off to any of that. And so it sounds like maybe the first was addressed, but the second wasn't in there.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find it right now and pull it up. They basically said that by design, they have tried to eliminate as much wastewater as possible going in to the reservoir. They didn't talk about setbacks at all. One of the questions that just jumped out at me is like, man, this is just not an objective thing, was we had put in a question about ensuring how we stop like garbage and that sort of thing from the development coming into the reservoir area. And it talked about how the developer has put in place that they're going to have closed in garbage areas and that sort of thing. So, it was just a developer's answer to our questions rather than an ecological response.
That's exactly what they did.
Well,
Talk about containers.
Well, what we talked about when we talked about initially doing this study or this assessment, we talked about using ERO, who we had used in the past for the Creek Walk, and we had already been working with them over the years on other projects. And every question that the committee asked, I put forward to this group. And initially, when I talked to them and they explained that they had worked on the environmental information for the developer, since we did have this relationship, I didn't feel it was a problem because they are, an environmental company, they're professional, we've never had a problem with them. And I put forward every single question that the committee asked. And
they did answer the questions. They've got answers to every question we put
right.
forward.
And, if there are answers that are not adequate in some way, I can either ask them for more information or, we could go forward and find a different company. And one of the reasons that, we did it in this memo form, it's not like a huge time-consuming study. We did it really fast. We did it with people we knew that we worked with, that the committee has worked with over the years. So, if there's anything that we want to change or more information that we would like to get, that's no problem.
So I think for me, it comes down to I mean, if this was truly an independent response from them, so for instance, question number 5, a concern over garbage not being contained on windy days ends up in the reservoir. Their response verbatim is, we are planning to have 9 to 10 containers and enclosure structures strategically placed to provide convenience for residents to dispose of their waste. This is a developer answering the question. These aren't, the ecological group isn't the one who's placing it. It's just, I have a hard time. I mean, maybe it's just they have a hard time separating themselves from the developer. But when I'm seeing them mixing their their pronouns with we and them and whatnot, I have a hard time putting any faith in this, especially because the whole point of this was to try to put in some type of safety measures against this specific development. So I don't know.
Well, and so I think we have 2 options. Like Allison said, we can ask for clarification. You know, we could, in this one, we might need to reword specifically on the garbage, right? I mean, what is the ecological risk of the trash in the reservoir not, garbage not being contained on windy days ends up in the reservoir? I mean, but, you know.
There's definitely some good learning moments in how we phrase things, for sure.
But the other option is we could have another study done, correct? With an independent. The question to the group is, do you think that since we got it today, we should digest it and come back with a recommendation, or do we think we know enough now to be able to make a recommendation to the staff on how we'd like to proceed?
Can I ask one
Yeah, sure.
minor question? Do you know how much it costs to have this done, Allison, to get these answers?
It was right around $2,000.
Okay, thank you.
And they visited the site, determined that the conditions were still present that were found in the background materials from Boulder County. And, you know, they're open to giving any more information or anything else the group wants. They're really easy to work with. I mean, if you remember Clint Hinkey, I think most of us took the Creek Walk. Yeah, so same group.
I mean, the concern is just timeliness of things, because during the budget meetings, Manager Magley stated that the Zaharias application would be coming forward for board approval in the spring. So depending on how fast this could happen, plus we're now asking somebody to do it during winter, which I don't know if that's actually impacts anything, but maybe that's a different challenge. I have no idea, not an expert. But if we went, I wouldn't ask these guys to do any more work. My concern is working with these guys. It's their independence issue. If we had to go to a different firm, I assume we don't have relationships with other wildlife ecologist firms.
Smith.
I think we did Smith Environmental,
Yeah, Smith, as we said,
yeah.
which is who did the assessments on the parcels in the beginning. Maybe, what year was that,
2005?
2005, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen their trucks around over on Boco property lately, so I'd like to suggest, since there is some reservation, now granted, we didn't know that they had already,
Yeah.
I didn't know.
I
I had
didn't
no
know
idea
either.
they're involved with doing something with Zaharias before we even came to them. But based on some of the things you guys have pointed out, it wouldn't hurt. I mean, if it's not a problem, to try Smith Environmental to get their objective opinion, someone who hasn't been involved with the developer prior to us being involved, because I think this may have been written differently if we had come to them first before Zaharias had come to them. It probably would have been, they would have cut and pasted different things in from studies they had already done for somebody else and their response. But also not just asking them the same questions as what's written here, but asking them worst case scenario questions. I think we were just asking kind of general questions, and now that we've gotten these answers, I think we can build on that with a Smith Environmental group. You know, what if, okay, we kind of already know the answers of what these people have said, assuming they say the same thing, what if?
Yeah.
To your point, Ryan.
Questions, yeah.
What worst case scenario happened? How would that be mitigated or dealt with? You know, these are the things that we worry about. You know, we don't want to hurt the habitat. We don't want to take away from it. And they're, you know, prairie dogs and raptors and everything else. It's like, oh yeah, no, that can be. I was like, well, I think there are ways. I think there's better ways than just saying no. Can't.
One thing that was interesting that I didn't see in here is it is an earthen dam, and I have heard in the past, and I don't remember, but it was in one of our meetings, and there was talk about prairie dogs and the earthen dam not always being a compatible thing.
Oh, because of
You mean in that they tunnel through it and they hurt the integrity of the, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just one of the
Yeah.
thoughts that I had written down, and I was like, hey, we should talk about that.
Yeah, Peter, do you?
Do we have a public comment?
Yeah.
Would you like to come to the podium?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that'd be great. Thanks.
Hasn't that dam been there for 100
It
years or
has.
something? I mean, if they were gonna do something to it, they would
Would've
have
happened
done
by
it
now.
by.
But it was rebuilt.
Yeah, it's rebuilt.
How long ago? 3 years ago?
It's been longer than that, I think.
5?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dam itself is a no prairie dog area per Boulder County. If they find prairie dogs encroaching near the vicinity of the dam, they'll be removed.
Okay.
So even though there's a prairie dog colony right next door, they're not allowed to expand onto the dam. So that's certainly a concern that, that the county has had. It's definitely a thing that's on people's minds.
So so the county actually has someone actively coming out and monitoring that situation to make sure there's no prairie dogs going beyond their boundary.
Presumably, I mean, I don't know for sure,
Yeah.
but it is their policy that is NOPD for.
Thank you. The only other thing I'll mention is that, and I'm in favor, I think we should, and especially because of our CenturyLink discussion, you know, if we go all in on that, when Zaharias goes forward, if it goes forward, having the best evidence we can to protect that resource is really our charter. And so I don't see how we don't, quite frankly.
I mean, the way I kept coming back to it is we've had several residents over the past year, 2 years, come to us and talked about this property. And we know, A, we might not be able to purchase it, so B, how do we protect it? And did this give us any information to help us protect it any further? And I don't think it did. So, in my mind, we'd want to push forward for another one.
So going back to your point, do we need more time to read it and digest it, or do we feel confident on Ken's summary of it?
For me personally, with what I've heard just from here, I don't need to go back and, I will go read it, but just because of when that application will come due, I think that we should push forward with this as soon as we can.
Yeah, I think time is of the essence, in my opinion. And I briefly read through what I could of it. And I think there are more questions that need to be answered that we need to funnel through Allison, obviously, when we do go the second round. But yeah, I think we need to go forward with a separate, slightly less biased agency. It's not their fault. I mean, they
No,
just
right. We're not questioning their integrity.
Right.
By any means. It's just the situation.
So if the group wants to go through the questions that are in this memo, decide what we would like to tease out and maybe add some more. And I'll get in touch this week. I'll start working on it tomorrow to engage
Okay.
with Smith Environmental, and we'll kind of do the same thing. Send emails, get our list, and then I'll get them to work on it and see what their schedule is and all
Okay.
that. And if not, if their schedule doesn't look that great, then we can find someone else.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Allison.
I think we might want to rephrase some of the questions,
Yeah.
because when I went through this, I thought it was because my background's more limited, but I got so little out of this. I had more questions when I got done rereading this. I think we should rephrase some of the questions.
So I don't know if we want to start a Google Doc where we can all filter in our questions all at the same time and see what each other's saying instead of having multiple emails back and
I
forth
think the
with.
Google Doc works well.
Yeah.
Especially with
Yep.
on our next topic, that seemed to work well.
Yeah,
So,
agreed.
do we have someone willing to own setting that up?
I can own. I can do
Okay,
it.
thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so on to the next topic, which is the Town 15 position paper. So last time we talked about that other document we had that was for our outreach was good for answering questions for outreach, but not really capturing our position. So Sean took the action to go and rework it, and I trust Tracy and you worked closely together, got sought feedback from the rest of the group. We all read it, provided feedback. I think it worked really well. I think we ended up with a nice product. And I guess the question is, are we done? Do we think it's complete?
I think we need to read through it and then vote on it and call it good. So I don't have the link. Do you have the link? Should I email it? Because I need to bring it up on the big screen so everyone can see it.
I don't think, was I on these emails at all?
No, I don't think so.
So then, yeah, would you?
Well, I.
Can we access?
There's a whole thing. Do you have it like in a Gmail or something that we could pull up on the?
Right, but she doesn't have her email on this computer. That's the issue.
And the board doesn't any longer have a board email associated with this because of the.
Could one of us just?
I was gonna say, one of us could just sign in, right?
You log in your email and then pull it up and then I can save it in our drive or.
I can try.
And just on this note, I'll probably send out our link to our Dropbox for the committee.
Oh, nice.
I've already started putting our resolution and our charters and a lot of our paperwork in there where everybody can access everything, and then we can put things like this in there that I may not have
My Hotmail account doesn't go in
in our regular files, so that'll be good. Tomorrow.
Score.
And so then we should, while Sean's bringing that up, Allison, we should migrate our current one, all the content in our current one over, so then it's town controlled rather than Ryan controlled now.
And you'll have editing and, everybody will have authorization.
Yeah,
to
no,
make
that'll
changes
be
and
great.
things. So you could just drag it, drop it. in.
Yep, perfect, that's great.
And then no one has to worry about being the keeper.
No, that'll be good. Good move. Yeah, I got that email from Martin as he was setting that up.
Oh my gosh.
Quadruple authentication?
That's you logging in, not me.
Did it do it?
It sent something to your phone.
Sorry about that, I
Tab
would
80.
have had it.
No, I dropped the ball on that, sorry. I should have downloaded it, I know.
Yeah, can I just plug in my laptop somewhere so we can show this? Or?
Didn't we do that before?
I thought we had at one point, but. 84, tap 84. There you go. Oh, right leg.
Something's happening.
Oh, wait.
Hey, we got it.
Yay.
All right, now you get to see all the weird stuff that's in my.
Yeah, don't look.
I think if you do position paper, search for position paper, will probably come up.
WN right there.
Yeah, right there. I just need to get the link. Oh, gosh.
One more down.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Can't
There it is.
And just
Good job.
click on that link there and we'll be good to go.
Boom.
All right.
Nice, way to go.
I know. Suddenly I go.
So this is the Town 15 paper for for those that haven't seen it, which is pretty much only the three of you guys. I don't know if I need to read it aloud or if people want to read it out alone.
I think it's worth reading out loud.
All right,
If
so
you're
this is our.
comfortable with that,
I'm great with that. I'll try to put on my best radio voice. All right, in August of 2018, the town board voted against a private developer's application for purchase of the town-owned 15-acre parcel of land named Town 15, located on the northeast corner of McCaslin Boulevard and Colton Road. This purchase proposal sparked both community and board interest regarding future potential use of the Town 15. The purpose of this document is to present the Town of Superior's Open Space Advisory Committee's, OSAC, position on this parcel. The following points represent OSAC's position on Town 15. Number one, OSAC believes Town 15 is a critical parcel to designate as permanent open space given its location within the richly diverse east-west ecological corridor spanning Superior, starting at Autry Park and Reservoir, continuing west through Community Park, and extending into the expansive Boulder County open space. Town 15's location affords unobstructed mountain views, extensive wildlife exposure, and immediate access to miles of protected land wherein nature may truly be experienced and appreciated. Number 2. In 2018, Town 15 was ranked as number 4 in OSAC's Open Space Summary Report and recommendations list of desired acquisition parcels for open space. This prioritized ranking was generated based on several factors, voted on by OSAC members, and is reviewed annually. It is important to note that although 3 other parcels ranked higher than Town 15 at that time, those parcels each have very distinct challenges to overcome prior to acquisition ever being possible, therefore further emphasizing the value of Town 15. For additional details of this prioritized list, please see the most recent report located online at OSAC's homepage. Number 3, in August of 2018, the town board discussed potential future usage of Town 15 with open space as one of those options. Further discussion and public outreach was recommended but deferred to 2019 when a new board would be seated. OSAC agrees with the importance of significant public outreach and input for this parcel. Number 4, Town 15 is not in its original natural state, similar to many parcels locally and nationwide, which are prepped for development, then later acquired for open space. OSAC believes the restoration of open space is a priority and would like this parcel restored to native prairie to provide a food supply for local wildlife, using supportive organizations and expert recommendations to achieve this important conservation for benefit of future generations. Number 5, given that the town owns this parcel and it was purchased in September of 2014 with no set intended use, a multitude of uses that may benefit the community are possible. Uses other than open space, however, are inconsistent with OSAC's mission and goals, and therefore outside OSAC's purview of evaluation. Given the uniqueness of Town 15's ownership, OSAC would collaborate with all advisory committees and accept direction from the board regarding any mixed use of this parcel, though OSAC's priority is preservation as open space. An example of such mixed use may include creatively and artfully combining both open space and manicured green space / parks and recreation, such as an equestrian center, dog park, and or playing fields. It is historically relevant to note that Town 15 has always been zoned planned development and mixed use. Richmond 15, now Town 15, was originally identified as a potential location for a community activity center, which is a broad term that includes various use options with the stated goal to draw residents together and strengthen social fabric. The 2012 Town of Superior Comprehensive Plan states the preferred land use for this site is commercial and office. Potential community-oriented uses may also be appropriate. The development of a western Rock Creek to mirror eastern Rock Creek, however, has changed dramatically since originally planned, particularly after the purchase of the land west of McCaslin Boulevard by Boulder County and the city of Boulder for open space. Just as the town's urban plan of this area of Rock Creek was adjusted so many years ago, OSAC believes that use of Town 15 should be reevaluated to best harmonize with the surrounding natural landscape profile. And then there are 8 various references. So that was a lot of reading.
Yeah, well done.
And hard to squint to. So are there any questions or comments based on the full reading? I didn't want to stop and if people had questions, but now we can go back and dissect if people so desire. Let's starting with the overview at the top, the first paragraph. Are there any questions or comments that people have edits to be made.
I mean, we've all read this.
Well, they
We
have.
have,
So-
yeah.
Oh, that's true.
But could we get any of Allison and Trustee Lacey's comments on details or its entirety?
I know I have a soothing voice. Hopefully you didn't fall asleep.
I don't really have any comments. I think it's really, really well written, and it would be really helpful just to send it to the board for, our discussion going on into 2019.
And this would also be provided at outreach events as well, if people were interested, right? So Chili Fest or
And I
anything
think
like
the
that.
thought was even have it on our webpage,
Yeah.
just
I mean,
as a resource that people could read when they want to know more about our view on Town 15. It's
Yeah.
right there.
Oil and gas won't always be talked about. At some point, Town 15 will come back up and people will be interested again.
I guess, Sean, my only comment is more around the logistics of maintaining a document like this. I mean, we will need to come back and review this in a year or at some point when conditions change. If the board doesn't get back to this in 2019, we might, need to rephrase the year, right? Because in a year, that'll be stale and then not look as relevant. But as long as we just add it to our work plan that if we're going to do this, we just need to review it. It's not a big task to do, so.
I think we'd want to review it, even if there is an outreach event in 2019, because at that point, we
Good
know
point.
more information too. So I agree that it's probably a work plan item that's coming up shortly in item 7.
So as we went through it, I was just trying to put myself in the shoes of devil's advocate and see if there's anything somebody who's against any of this would point out and try to poke holes in. In bullet point number 1, in that first sentence, we say within the richly diverse east-west ecological corridor. I can imagine the first question we'll get is in whose professional opinion is this ecologically diverse? I can't remember what we have in our current write-up of this property in our rankings. Can we? I was going to say, so can we support that? I mean, I don't have a problem with it being in there, but if someone's going to attack this down the road.
That's a good point. And one more note on devil's advocate is number 4 or number 5, where we talk about other uses of the parcel.
That'd be 5.
That, is it? Why can't I see it? Where we have the dog park,
No, that's not.
That's next page,
Yeah.
yeah.
right there. That's the only line I have questions about. And playing fields have been addressed being used there. She didn't come to us, but she went to ProStack and I believe the board about the dog park. And then we had Mr. Sawtelle here about the equestrian center. So that's why those are kind of there. But does anyone have any comments about that line? Again, on the devil's note.
I did when we were working on it. I said I didn't want that in there, but
I just
realized
pulled
it's
the
up to-
Richmond property overview from our document that's online. And it just has a description. Property is a weedy vacant lot receiving intermittent human use. And then, it has the zoning and everything, and then it has some OSAC observations. And this was, from the older one, I was trying to look for
Yeah.
like the more specific stuff.
I don't think, in the new one, I don't think we added
Yeah, I don't think we.
much more specific. I can go look at it.
Sorry, I'm jumping around, but going back to your point about the corridor. So it states corridor, it doesn't state
Yeah.
the lot. And the corridor is diverse ecologically. However, we do not have an ecologist who specifically has written that anywhere in our document. So your question still is true.
How about we just drop the word richly within the diverse east-west ecological corridor?
Well, what makes it diverse? That's the question.
I mean, we've got,
we have playing
I mean, you have a
fields and
river, you
creeks
have
and lakes.
A bunch of vegetation.
Vegetation, creatures.
Coyotes, raptors.
Mm-hmm. All sorts of birds of prey. We don't have prairie dogs, but we have other sources that they are feeding off of.
Raccoons.
Yeah.
lots of raccoons.
Yeah.
We could get rid
It
of the
does
word
say-
diverse also.
It does say could be used by wildlife as a migration corridor.
Well, there are geese and
Yeah.
turkeys, but I don't know.
Well, I back up to that open space and it is a migration corridor. There's coyotes in there.
If we get rid
All
of,
the time.
if we get rid of the word diverse also, I don't think there's anything that can be
That's what I
challenged.
was saying.
Yeah.
Both.
Okay.
Tracy, to your point, I could go with Vanessa and I'd be okay dropping it. I know that we then lose track of anything that we had discussed, the example sentence. And that's why we had it in there, I'm assuming, right? Yeah.
Right, and we're not just saying equestrian, we're saying all the things that have come to us from public comment, right?
Right.
The equestrian centers come to us, the dog park has gone to ProStack, and plating
Ah.
fields have been
I
suggestions
mean,
other
we
people have
could, we
made.
could phrase it that way, such as items we've heard from public comment, including these, and then it's very clear
Yeah.
why they're there.
Such as proposals. All right,
Ideas.
what was the,
Suggestions.
Yeah.
Suggestions.
Resident suggestions.
Resident suggestions, yeah.
and then put a little dash.
Okay.
What's it, resident suggestions instead of.
Or resident suggested, or
Yeah,
such as
that would be
residents.
fine too.
Amenities.
There we go. Resident says amenities.
That's what we always call it.
Did I spell that right?
I don't know.
Nope, I guess not. I need better glasses.
One M.
There we go, thank you.
Okay.
I mean, I think we could wordsmith this thing to death. I think that it's really well written as
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, those are the-
Exactly.
And as we get feedback, we can adjust it. It's not like this is set in stone.
Yeah.
I think you took from what we started with and made a really nice
Thank you.
and
Well,
succinct.
Tracy was a
position.
huge part of that too, so thank you.
No, I think this is awesome.
Nice job, guys.
Yep. So I think we need to have a motion to have this presented to the board and propose that it be put onto our homepage, right? Don't we need to do that?
Do we need a motion
I don't
for
know if we
that,
need a
or
motion for
we can
that.
just,
To
Because
do,
we're not asking the board to do anything.
well, to put it onto our website, don't we need their permission to put it on our website? Like we did our mission and goals?
No? Well, that was just because that was changing the direction of our committee. I
Okay.
think we've added other stuff in the past without sending it to those recommendations.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I'll
but I
take it.
think maybe an interesting point here is we should remember this when we do have our board dinner. Just as something to, it's an opportunity to bring it up again, that it's a piece of work that we put out there for them as a resource.
It could be also put on the end of our notes. We've done that
Okay.
before.
We should
with
definitely add it
items
as an
like this.
Oh,
appendix
okay.
this time around.
Okay, that's a good idea. Well, again, thank you. I think that worked really well, how we
Well,
approached that. and
thank
we've
you
got a
all
nice
for
product.
humoring me.
No,
I appreciate that.
Okay. Well, that's our property discussion. That actually went smoother or faster than I thought it would, so that's good. Next, we need to talk about the Shan Shan Trailhead, and I specifically worded it as timeline and future steps. Because there's a lot of moving parts to this, right? So we submitted a concept to Boulder County, and I forget exactly where the approvals went, but I know the county commissioners we know that they haven't approved it yet. We're just waiting for it, and we think it'll be just in a consent agenda at some point. So we think it's more just them getting it into their process and saying, okay, once that's done, we need to decide what to do next. Some of the constraints are that we have a certain amount in the budget, right? So if we decide that we wanted to do something very different, not only do we need to work with Boulder County to potentially get it reapproved, we also may not have budget next year to do the build. So it doesn't mean we shouldn't be discussing it, but those are, I guess, the constraints. And then the other thing we need to decide is that we did feel when we were going through this that we wanted to have outreach And when we said outreach, it wasn't clear, you know, what we should clearly define is what kind of outreach do we want? Do we want it to be open public engagement where we hold separate sessions, or, you know, or are we looking to do outreach to the other committees, you know, where the Historic Commission and the Youth Council and CAPS could provide some ideas they might have around, you know, naming or other amenities or things that we could be doing around this design. So the goal here is try to figure out what is the process we want to follow once, you know, assuming it gets approved, to get to the stage where we can recommend to the town, okay, it's time to, you know, get this scheduled and break ground. So that's where we're with this one. So I'll just open it up to comment.
From a staff perspective, is there a specific timeline that you guys already have? I mean, clearly we're waiting on Boulder County. I guess, second question, have you guys gotten any other questions from like POSAC or Boulder County staff about this, or is it literally just waiting in line for the?
No, yeah, it's just waiting in line, from what I understand, for the commissioners to weigh in on. But it shouldn't, we were told that it shouldn't preclude us from thinking about, you know, taking our next steps or what we wanted to do. And one of the things that we also talked about is, remember that the initial reasons for the trailhead was to mitigate some of the traffic concerns in original town around the trailhead that's down there, and with the house fire and the machinery needing to go through there. And this was primarily a way to mitigate that. And but that being said, you know, we can, you know, even come up with some type of timeline and try to hone in on what exactly do we want to ask about. What is, you know, what is the goal? That space up there is limited, the flat space. Like we talked about at our last meeting, we did have some raptor nests up there. So, you know, kind of maybe discuss also, what are we looking to achieve up there, and what's the goal?
Maybe if we work backwards, what's our hope for construction, like final completed construction? Are we looking at summer 2019, fall 2019? And then that can help us create a timeline of what our steps are.
Well, and one of the things we talked about at the last meeting, you know, what would be the optimal time frame, especially because of the raptors that were identified? You know, was there a constraint around nesting and breeding seasons, or, you know, things like that? So that's kind of unknown also. We have the budget, it's for next year. Of course, it would be better to do it when the weather is warmer, you know, just due to hard ground and tempering of materials and things like that.
So there's no, it sounds like there's no hard date that it has to be completed by, correct?
Well,
Next year.
by the end of the
2019,
year.
yes.
Next
December
year.
31st, 2019, it has to be
Yes.
completed. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe now I should say what I was going to say about that area as far as raptors later. But so Peter's been watching that area, and he's done a great job sending me reports. And the latest is, well, first of all, he was right about where the tree is. It is farther away from where the trailhead would be than I thought it was. It's really deceptive. When you look from McCaslin, it looks super close, but if you look from below, it's farther away. It's still close enough that I think it would impact a nesting raptor. But as of right now, he thinks there's magpies instead of a nest, a red-tailed hawk nest, but that wouldn't be coming until later. They wouldn't be setting up their nest until February or so. But they are in the area, so they might take it back over from the magpies. So it's a changing thing. We don't really know. So that's a good reason that we have the program so we can watch it. But if they do nest, they would definitely be out of there by July, right?
I'm not sure, probably in July.
I thought that's what,
Normally when raptor closures.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good to know.
So that's some kind of a time frame, February through July.
I mean, Tracy, specifically for you, I know that you had mentioned in the past wanting that other engagement, you know, with having other viewpoints to help build a better facility for everyone in the community, like you said, including the historic commission maybe, or the youth. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it goes back to budget. Can we touch on that first? And then I'd love to have all of us touch on outreach. So, how much do we have, Allison, for it in the budget?
I think it's 100,000.
So, you would be more of an expert on that. I mean, I guess none of us really know what that would get us, but for the shell design that we currently have, how much would that cost? So we know what we're starting off with.
Well, I think that was the estimate for the groundwork in the parking lot.
For the
And
design work,
typically,
okay.
a lot of times that's how the budget will work. It's working from, you know, an estimate of how much the work will cost.
Mhm.
That is put into the project, into the hopper at that point.
Okay.
And then I would assume that any other amenities, either it would be a budget amendment or request, or it would be for 2020.
Okay, that's
Depending
helpful.
on, you know, what our timeline looked like, or what we wanted to do, or how we, you know, how things progressed.
Well, and that was another thought, is that we could almost separate this into two tasks. We could move forward with the shell design that's budgeted, get the parking lot, the trail access, you know, the access to McCaslin done. And then the second part would be outreach and design of amenities that we would ask for in another budget cycle. And that would give us more time, especially since it's hard to work through this stuff when we have one meeting a month and trying to coordinate other committee meetings and whatnot. I mean, I'm concerned about that, right? If we were gonna break ground in August, we'd have, 6 meetings to try to get through a fair bit of content. So that's something to think about.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So going back to outreach, I sent all of you guys that information that, I learned at the conference last year. And I really would just love everyone else's opinion on that. Is that something we want to do? Is outreach important to us, or do we want to be, just going with our own thoughts and opinions, which is okay too, but, and like Ryan already touched on, who do we want to outreach to? I personally think it would be great to collaborate with Historical Commission and maybe even CAPS a little bit, and do touch base with youth and other members and groups of our community to get an idea if anyone has any input on this amazing new trailhead that we're going to have in town. But that's my take. What is everyone else thinking?
Well, I mean, even ACES might be interested in putting in some solar cell and some recyclable light, or not, recyclable, but environmentally friendly technology that they could show off, or, who knows, it wouldn't be a build out. So,
I'm wondering, what is being done to prevent the problem now? The reason why we're moving it, what is being done to prevent people from still parking down there and using that instead of using our new thing?
oh,
'Cause
you
I
mean
feel
after
like-
we build it, there'll be new signage? There'll be like no parking signs and whatnot that'll be placed? At least that's what I remember the discussion with Patrick.
I think they're taking away the gate down there too. I don't think they're gonna leave that as an access point. I think they're gonna close that off. So regardless of signs, that's going away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I just felt like that makes a
Because that was
difference.
one of the things that was brought up during the Boulder County meeting was, are we eliminating access points by putting this here? And we were like, yes, that was our intent. They said, good, because that's what we would like to do. We don't want to have so many access points. We would like to limit it. And we would essentially be taking away 2 for the 1? Is that what it was?
I don't recall about the gates, but I'm positive about the parking signs, because I think that there was some discussion about maybe people that were biking would want
Yeah,
to
that-
not make the climb and to head in on an easier route. But I'm not sure about removing the gates, but I do know there was the discussion about having so many access points in such a small area and the impacts that it causes.
No, you're right, because if you're coming up the Coal Creek Trail, if you now had to turn and go up and around the roundabout and up the concrete all the way up that hill, I don't think people would like that. I know I wouldn't like that. I just want to keep going on that trail and get west as fast as I can, so. Well, I guess we need to verify that.
Well, if I'm trying to remember, I think maybe the spot they were talking about closing down was one of the access points over by Key Bank.
Mm-mm.
Or,
It was
one
that third,
behind Key Bank.
well, Key Bank was one of them, but Key
Yeah.
Bank's not gonna relinquish that.
No, you wouldn't
It was,
imagine so.
it was specifically Third Ave, that corner. So, yeah, I guess we need clarification.
Isn't there another access point between Key Bank?
There is,
Yes.
yes. The sidewalk continues down
Yeah.
below there, and there is
Directly
another
across
access
the
point
bridge.
there.
Right.
So that was the other one. Those were the two I was thinking of, was the one
Yeah.
that sidewalk goes
Makes
to,
sense to-
and
Yeah,
then the
shut
one on
down.
Third Ave.
Yeah, I think that one makes more sense. Well, I say that one, the one south of, or
Key-
sorry, north of
north of Key Bank.
That goes to the sidewalk, because our trailhead's gonna be directly in that proximity. I don't know about Third Avenue. I mean, if I'm in Original Town and I live on that block, I want that one open so I can get in there.
Right.
I mean, otherwise you have to go all the way up to, Coal Creek Crossing there,
Yeah, you'd have to go to Coal Creek
or
Crossing.
up the hill to
Yeah.
the thing, so.
I forget about Coal Creek Crossing. That's not horrible, but it's not great either.
If
If you're on
you're
a busy
walking,
street
yeah.
with people cutting through there, that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And our whole discussion was based around that parking and safety issue and access. And I don't recall the gate being removed, but I definitely recall no parking signs for, trail users.
Yeah.
So could you get clarity on that Third Avenue one, if Boulder County was planning to do anything with that access point or not once the trailhead is created? I guess that's the only, and I'm assuming the other one over by Key Bank also would be closed, but I guess I would like clarity on, would those go away, or what would happen with those two?
Are there informational signs right there too, making it look like a trailhead that we would want to move? I can't
There's
remember.
really
There is a
not.
big placard, isn't there? down there?
Oh,
so.
outside the fence
Yeah.
that, yeah. It's a good,
It's about the Superior Coal Company that was, it used to be a railroad through there. There's several of them, but the first one is right there at that intersection.
On
outside
Third
the
Ave?
gate,
Yeah.
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 Well, it seems like we kind of have an idea on a timeline for the initial construction would be August or later. So August, I think is, it could move a month or so, but what do we want to, how much do we want to do to try to think about other amenities? I mean, we really kind of need to decide, do we want to do outreach and see what grand plans people have? I mean, one thought would be we could do that and see what we get, and maybe we could fold it in and just do it all in one shot. But if we got so much, we could say, man, this is overwhelming, why don't we continue this and move it as a project for 2020?
Oh, go ahead, John.
Well, I was just gonna say, I like your idea of separating. I have two separate things. I think we build the trailhead this year and then take the time to do a thorough job and getting public input and advisory committee input and having a separate budget for 2020 so that we get what we want and not have something like, ooh, that wasn't quite what we were thinking, but it's gonna have to do with the current budget we have. That's my opinion.
I mean, my thoughts are, anytime you can gather more information, whether it's from the other committees or community, you get more buy-in, you get, potentially ideas we haven't even thought of, and I think it's a good thing. Now, it requires more time, more effort, but we have more time. I mean, from all of our community outreach events would be really between with the exception of Chili Fest, would be between now and the time that construction would start. I also like the idea of two separate budget items. Let's get the parking structures and things built, and then step back and say, what else do we want to do here? That's my opinion on it.
I think the only thing I would add is that as far as outreach goes, one of the things that we talked about was naming. I think we might want to front load that way we have a name for it when it gets constructed.
Yeah, that would be done this year, for sure,
Yeah.
the name.
Prior, clearly not the current board, but the prior board, and I'm thinking specifically of former trustee Dozell, had given direction to work directly with the historical commission for the naming of it. I don't know if that still stands, but I think that was the only solid direction we've been given as far as outreach.
And I've actually attended a historical commission meeting, and I have heard it brought up, so it is still on their radar. And I have all the documents from the processes that the town has used in the past to name parks, for example, in one of our folders, so that when we're ready to go on that, it's ready to go.
Well, I mean, one option is, so those are two very, very different, directions. It's almost, do we farm the naming out to historical commission and just say this will have a historical tie, considering where the location is and the coal mines that are right over there? Or do we go about the, I'll say typical way, where it goes out to the public? But at that point, then what's historical commission doing?
I say we farm it out to historical. I think we owe that to them.
I do too.
Especially with the location.
The
up on that
location
hill
is
overlooking that
so
valley.
rich and
Yeah.
diverse in that area.
And not only that, we have
Good
a
use
lot
of
of
funds.
other things to do
Agreed.
with that. I think that's an easy thing to relinquish control on and have buy-in from another
That's a
committee.
good.
Right, and
Yeah,
make
I
it
like that.
valuable, so it's
Yeah.
not just some random name that was
Mhm.
chosen.
Okay. Well, I
Sweet.
think,
Can do you mind if I
yeah, go ahead.
interject? So I like the two budgets, but I'm only concerned that if they do the parking lot now and then we try to add other things later, that what is already set in place will limit what we can do later. So it's just something to think about. I agree, that's a great idea because it would give us a lot more time, but would there be things that we wouldn't be able to do then because of that?
the flip side of that would be that then there isn't budget and then we're not able to build. But I think maybe there's a happy medium. Maybe we start reaching out to the other groups early in the year to start getting the ideas. And if there isn't much, and maybe it's an incremental 20 grand, 30 grand, we could ask. They could say, no, why don't we do it later? But at least it's on the radar at that point.
So, yeah, that's a good point, Tracy. We want to, if we're putting the infrastructure in now, we need to also kind of think about, is there a possibility of putting electrical and water in there now, which we would need to get in before, once the stuff's down, it's down. I don't know. It'd probably be a lot of work to put it in later. And I don't know if that's something that could be included in that budget or not, or if it's even feasible. I don't know where they draw Shan Shan had power and it had water at one point in time before it got torn down. I don't know if that could get up the hill or so that we'd be able to tap into that source or not.
Well, I do know that, Excel came out and removed power from Shan Shan. There are light poles out there though, so, there's,
Put it in
that structure is,
otherwise.
there,
Right.
sewer, all that.
I just want to make sure there is opportunity for water and sewer in that area. I know, even though they.
Well, I do know that, as far as irrigation for landscape and plant materials, on some of the other projects that we've worked on in that vicinity, there has been sleeves run under McCaslin to access the other side of the road because a lot of our areas along trails are sod and green. But, of course, there are no connectors that have run out into that area. And also one of the other main reasons for the selection of that site versus lower down, when we initially started looking at placement, was the turning and traffic safety vision corridors and the turning to get in and out of that site. So that was one of the reasons that it was designed in that certain way and in that certain location.
I think that's a really helpful thing to remember though. So given that, we probably don't want to change how it is set up currently, at least the parking lot and the entrance and exit, et cetera.
Yeah, I think in my mind, when we talk about design, we talk about structures, right? A bathroom, a gazebo, a picnic area.
Well, again,
There's not that much space up there, but we do own the land, kind of where that home is below. And could that be used as, you could access the trail around to have something over there? I don't know.
Trees, everything. Who was our former member that did that PowerPoint?
Oh,
Matt
yeah.
Morris.
Yeah, I mean, Matt had just a plethora of things that he.
I just don't want us to have
Ideas.
like porta-johns. I mean, I'm sorry, a porta-john just takes away from a trailhead. I've never been a big fan of those. I think the structure we have at Colton Trailhead is perfect.
Don't say that to the historical commission though, because they have their little porta.
Yeah, but that's historical.
On
It's
the-
not like green and plastic.
It is
Oh,
green
it
and
is?
plastic.
Oh,
It just
never mind,
has the
sorry.
wooden, what we do typically is we'll have those facilities, but we'll also enclose them in like a nice wooden enclosure and things like that, so.
So it looks more like a historic outhouse.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, so I think what might be helpful is we have, like a concept plan, basically, that went to Boulder County, and that's what's been approved by POSAC and needs to get approved by the commissioners. So I guess like the next step for staff is you guys will pull together actual plans that can be like construction plans. And I'm just thinking back to the way like the ProStack process would go for, say, like the skate park, where before, like a month or two before it come to the board, you'd see the plans, people would comment on it, talk about it. Maybe that is a good time to, A, see what is truly going to come out of it in this initial base year, but B, I don't know, is it possible to get options? Just, we could add this later, and whether it's water, electricity, I mean, whatever, to show that there's possibilities to grow. I mean, I think that's just the missing step, because my biggest concern is that we move forward now, but we don't put things in place to be able to grow with it,
Well,
if that's really what we want to do.
Couple different things. The skate park, because we didn't have to work with, in conjunction with another entity, we didn't have to get permission.
Yeah.
And, we did get the amenities fleshed out by some of the residents and families and children that came to the meetings and said, hey, we want this kind of ramp, for example.
Yeah.
And then that design was created from that input. And then, for example, our parking lot would go out to bid. Maybe it could go out, in theory, it could go out to bid with the plans that we have that we gave to Boulder County. And, we could get 5 bids and we would start the construction, award it, and begin the construction. If we wanted to add major infrastructure, we might want to look at the feasibility of that before going out to bid to design more, keep those larger design components closer together. Also, if there's substantial changes to our design, we have to go back through Boulder County again.
And I think that's just the missing piece. I mean, we all
Right.
saw like the concept plan, and we know what conceptually this could have been, and there were some Cadillac features in there.
Yes.
It looked really nice. So I don't know, personally, I'm having a hard time picturing what this thing's gonna look like as this base model. Like, am I looking at just a parking lot with a few stumps and that sort of like?
Well, it's a parking lot. There's a few bushes around the ditch, but basically it's a completely empty site except for like native grasses.
So it doesn't look like what we saw in the concept. So if we wanted to make it look like what we saw in the concept, like an actual like.
Well, the concept that we gave to
We saw
POSAC.
2 concepts, though.
Yes.
Right. But the concept we gave to POSAC still had bigger features, didn't it?
I don't think so.
It was just the parking lot, how the sidewalks and trails connected, and the cattle gate, and kind of the sidewalk / bike
Okay.
trail that went along the side of it and then connected into the space. And the fencing that was existing, the barbed wire fence.
Okay. I was
It was
combining the
super
two.
basic.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Where's a copy of this document?
I don't
Concept
know.
plan.
If you look, you can actually find it on the Boulder County notes from July 11th, I think is when we presented it. So
And
if you,
it'll be in our
if you go to their,
folders.
yeah, oh, it will be. Excellent.
put it in there.
So never mind. But if you wanted to see it before that, you could go to the, whatever Boulder County's open space website is for their meeting minutes from July.
So just trying to pull this all back together. We think we have a tentative date. We know we want to get help with the Historic Commission. And then when we get the plans done, we want to look at these other potential options. But then the question is, for those options, how much legwork do we want to do beforehand on what those potentially are? And I guess my suggestion is maybe we just add this as an item we work on. We look at it each meeting up through, starting in January. I don't really know what else to do to get it going.
Yeah, I think we write something that we can give to all the other committees, say we are looking to solicit input from your committees on these certain things for our new trailhead. Specifically for this committee, we're kind of looking for if there's any benefit you can add for solar power or whatever, like you said, or art designs or historical elements or signage or whatever. I mean, they all have their, but I think we need to draft something that we can send to all of them at the same time saying, we're looking for your help. We're the lead on this, but we're looking for your help with additional elements. And then we'd like your feedback by a deadline.
Okay.
And I think that's the best way to go with this. In terms of public input,
Yeah, so my only concern with public input is I think it's fine to talk about it in outreach and that we talk about
that's
it in our meetings.
the only thing I would do.
Having like an open session.
Not a survey monkey.
Yeah, that can have unintended consequences.
Yes.
And we've seen it happen with some facilities that the town has tried to build, obviously much grander scale than what we're talking about, but it can have unintended consequences, so.
I think maybe when we get ideas back or when we send ideas to the other committees, there might be something that becomes really obvious, that it makes sense for public work to be done on. And that way they have that opportunity, but it's something very specific rather than saying, we're creating this trailhead, what do you want to do with it? Because that opens up for too many options, and I think it needs to be really clear what we want their input on.
So on what timeline do we think we should get this document out to the other committees? I mean, do we think January is too late? The only reason I say that is we are thinking that our next meeting will not be an official meeting, so this would be the last one.
Do you mind if I interject? Are there
Certainly.
any other organizations other than our advisory committees that we would be interested in getting information from? Like, what is the youth leadership? What is their actual title?
Superior Leadership.
Superior Youth
okay.
Leadership Council.
Would we be interested in meeting with them and
I think we would include them in this,
touching
right?
base with
Yeah,
them?
I absolutely think we should include them.
And any other organizations that we know of that could give us some value?
I was just thinking any town relationship,
Yeah.
I don't care if it's Cub Scouts or
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
whatever. Sure, we can do that, but I think our easiest path is through the town.
I mean, the benefit of keeping it in town is everybody meets here. So you have the benefit of being able to throw it up on the screen with the staff liaison, walk them through what's there, and it's a bit more controlled. Cub Scout, I'm trying to think who else we
Yeah.
could, besides like Cub Scouts and everybody like that.
Controlled, as you said, more controlled, targeted groups.
And one of the other items is to maybe think about and document during these discussions where other amenities of this similar type, of a trailhead, for example, Colton Trailhead, and what amenities are there and how close or how many do we put how close together, how everybody, thinks about that.
That's a great point.
I mean, the other thing is, this is being built with open space funds, so depending on what happens with CenturyLink, maybe we don't expand more amenities in 2020 if we're spending all of our money elsewhere.
All right.
Which those expansions could be done 8 years down the road, really,
Yeah.
I guess it would be a different OSAC board felt so, but as town members.
I'm
we
still
can
gonna
always
be here, what are you
remind them. Yeah. Okay. Well, I actually, I mean, does
We're all
everyone?
term limited.
Does everyone feel
Not me, I'm
comfortable
going back.
with this? And actually, I think this will work into our work plan when we get into it we can put specific items on the Shan Shan project in the different quarters for our work plan. I think that'll work well.
I was just wondering if Boulder County or we have to pay for any cool educational signage that might be at the trailhead, like these are the cool mountains you're looking at, or this is the wildlife you find here, because they tend to have that stuff at their trailheads and it's on their land. So I just wondered if they would pay for that
Fund
kind of
any?
stuff, or
Yeah.
since it's educational.
I think that maybe fits into this outreach to see what they're willing to do.
Mhm.
Because even the Historic Commission maybe would want to
Oh,
have
yeah.
something, or even, like even at the Colton Trailhead, the Boy Scouts did a community service project with their bike tool rack that they wanted to, I mean, there's so many cool things we could.
Yeah.
Oh, Eagle Scouts, sorry. But it was cool.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I just want to thank you all for, working on that and considering, I think.
So what actions do we have at this point going forward?
The actions we have are to put this into our work plan.
Okay, well,
For next year. But
that's-
more specifically, we think we have a date. We know we want to contact the Historic Commission about naming.
I think we can do that right now.
Yeah, I think we can do
And
that.
Allison's, I think you've already contacted them, right? It's just a matter of giving them the ball to go with fully.
I mean, I think maybe.
just sent their liaison the
Excellent.
naming idea, and, we may need to talk through the deviation from the typical process, but I don't really see that.
Okay. And then we want to get this input started. My recommendation is that we start that in January. But we can start thinking about, maybe we start putting it together
We could
beforehand
do
and
what
have
we
it
did with
ready
the
to
Town
go.
15
Yeah, just have
document.
that.
Start drafting.
And it does bring up another point, is that previously in our subgroups, we had broken up into subgroups for different things. Patricia was the one that owned Shan Shan, and she is now termed out. So we are looking for, I think it would be good to have a volunteer from this group that would spearhead this, meaning you're the point of contact to make sure that the document gets created and work through these. So we don't need a volunteer tonight, but if you're interested and would like to volunteer, let me know, because we will be assigning out the duties again at the first meeting in January. So we can wait to then, but if you're interested, we could assign it sooner. So I think those are the action items.
So who wants to start creating the document that we're going to send out to the advisory committees? Who wants to own that? All right, I will do that.
Thank you, Tracy.
That's the question.
Was everyone staring at you? Was that awkward?
Is that what I was looking at my computer?
We're avoiding eye contact, that's what I was doing.
Okay.
Nice.
And while we're doing our work plan, if we want to create another column with members that want to take ownership of a specific thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing for one person to kind of
Well, it could be
have
multiple.
oversight.
Actually, maybe it should be multiple.
I think
agree.
it needs to
As a
be broken
committee.
up, yeah, I mean.
It was 2 to 3 last time, like it
Yeah.
was Patricia
Yeah.
and then you and then kind of me, but not
Yeah,
really, and yeah.
Right, and before that was Matt.
Matt was on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I think it could be broken up. I mean, I'm happy to be part of it, but I don't want to take on the whole thing.
Okay.
It's just a lot. And I'd be happy to help you with the drafting of
Sounds
the,
good.
whatever we're calling it.
Okay.
All right, so are
Outreach to
we
advisories.
comfortable with our plan? Are we ready to move on? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All right, so let's develop our work plan.
Who's gonna drive?
I'll drive. I don't mind.
Can you make it
driving.
bigger? I can.
Yeah, I'll make it bigger.
Thank you.
I know how to do that. Better?
Yes, definitely.
So, I'll start with this. So last year, we did take a really deep dive into this, and I think we got it to a pretty good structure. Here. So I looked at this pretty closely ahead of time, and I don't think we actually need to make that many changes. But let's just dig in. So this, I know that, I mean, we didn't do this year, so this one definitely will come off. You know, we didn't do an open space summary report update. So I'm gonna just remove this one. Actually, hold on. Just do this. And we'll clean up the formatting later, because the numbering will be all off. Number 7.
Up above it on number 4, change it to
Oh, yeah,
2019.
thank you. Yep. This, last year was where we started this Dropbox, and I think that's worked well, and the town's going to their own, so we don't really need to discuss this again. The town has a solution that they're gonna be providing for us. Number 6, you know, we did this, but not much really came back, right? Am I remembering this right? I mean, this is in our mission statement for wildlife encouragement. We do have a good project that we're working on with the Raptors.
Mhm.
What do we want to do around this one?
So that's been on there forever, as we all know. And I investigated right before Vanessa got on to try to find some things that we could do with Boulder County and research their website at length. And then Vanessa came on with her Raptor program. So that's really meeting that. We could do other things if anyone else is interested in researching and finding anything else to do. I was not successful in finding anything.
And
Great,
the
I
Boy
sent out an
Scouts
email
did
and
do
not much
the
was there.
milkweed
Yeah.
butterfly project, so that, I think, that qualifies for this
Mhm.
pretty well.
I mean, maybe we change the wording, instead of meet with Boulder County staff, we could change it to investigate, further investigate additional flora and fauna opportunities. I mean, that's very specific action of what we were gonna go do, and, with Vanessa, the work she's done didn't really come from that.
Right.
I think the question I would have is, Vanessa, where would the Raptor activities go? As far as steps, getting people involved, is that something that would drop in the first quarter? What's your vision on how that would work?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
The first quarter is definitely going to be a busy raptor monitor time because that's when they're nesting. But also I was thinking, when I talked to Boulder County and other folks when I was putting this program together, Boulder County said they would always be willing to come out and meet with me or us and walk around and look at even specific sites and tell me exactly what they thought we could do to
May wanna
enhance
pin
the
that.
area, so I could
What's that?
do
May
something
wanna
like
pin
that
this was-
anytime, I think.
Yeah, is that what it is?
Yeah, so go over to the far corner. I can't barely see.
No, this view is different than what I'm used to.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, we'll figure it out.
So are they planning to come out, or they were just available?
They just said that they would
Okay.
if we wanted them to,
Mhm.
or I wanted them to, if there were ever any issues, or
Right.
just in general, if we wanted them to look at a specific area or site and give their ideas about it, they'd be willing to do that.
So we could tag team, and if you actually do want input on your program, we could ask them this exact question, which has been on our work plan for some time.
So that's not something that we have done before. We haven't met with Boulder County to do that before, or we have every year done that? No.
They've blown us off.
Oh, okay. They're busy.
Yeah.
But I think, Ken, what you're asking though is, should this be a first quarter or should this be an ongoing
Yeah.
task?
Well, that, and I was trying to figure out whether or not we need to put something specific to just the Raptor program in here and where that would go. It sounds like it would need to be, well, I don't know, Vanessa, is something
The Raptor program's all year.
yeah, so it's an
round.
ongoing thing. Is there a ramp up time or anything like that where we try to go out and get additional monitors to volunteer to
The bus-
observe, or?
I'm doing it year round just because of the nature of our town and because it's small and because there's so much public nearby these sites. But Boulder County Boulder City, they only do it during the nesting season so that they can decide when closures are going to happen. So the busiest time is really in the winter and spring,
Okay.
but we'll be doing it year round.
So maybe we just put that in ongoing then, just the Raptor program.
Okay, so I think should we move this down to ongoing as well?
I think so.
Since we're not done have a specific action of who to meet with?
Yeah. I think last time we put it in first quarter just because we're trying to actually
We're
force.
trying to actually
something
meet,
happen.
yeah. And then we also, I'll fix up the numbers here, but something around continuing to, and I'll fix my typos. Gosh, this keyboard is different. Something along those lines.
Wings over Superior.
Okay. We remove this.
Mhm.
So I will recommend that we add, we did decide that we want to do our property review each year.
Yep.
And so I think, the discussion there is, last time we did it late in the year and we felt that it was harder to do when it was not as, things weren't growing. There weren't weeds and grasses out there. So the question there, I think we need to do it in the first or second quarter. Just wanted to throw that out there where people think we should be putting that one in this. I don't know if it matters that much with how many spaces we have left.
I don't think it does either. What are the first and second quarter? We could do that based on how much is in those two quarters.
Well, you just look at this, the second quarter gets busy
So,
Yeah.
with
first
all the
quarter?
events coming up,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Easy enough?
I agree. I think just given what we have in first quarter and second quarter, we should just put it in first.
And when you say, okay, I'll let you finish typing first.
What do we call it? They're basically open space acquisition
Targets.
target. Or open space property.
OSSRR targets or parcels? Or?
Yeah, we discussed also having a OSSRR type update, but also a shorter, more actionable list of properties.
Which is this?
We decided, I think we would evaluate them with both criteria and one activity. I'm not sure exactly how, but that's something, I think in one meeting, we'll need to develop the criteria and then feed it back, so.
Yeah, so why don't we say it that way? Why don't we say, look at review criteria for short-term versus long-term views of open space acquisition ranking or something like that? Because that's where we need to start, to be honest. And it doesn't matter what quarter, because it really depends on the market. The market starts heating up in the second quarter, to be honest. That's when things start selling. So that's when you actually want to do the review, is when, oh gosh, this property became available, right up to the top of our priority list.
But they are going to be different criteria because the long term, unless we change the criteria, it didn't have, is this for sale? Whereas
No, it
the
didn't,
short term
right.
would look at those things.
It'd be driven by
still
that
think-
probably.
It's
yeah.
reality versus optimistic or idealistic and versus
Yes.
reality.
I think for those of us that have done this, it's pretty easy to segment them. I think, and there's so few. Yes, the criteria help, but it's pretty easy to almost order these in your head. Maybe it is for me because I've done it. We still need to have the criteria in the list, right? It's good to have proof of how we did it and have a methodical process.
Absolutely.
But it might be just that the attainability piece of it is way more heavily weighted in our short-term
Yes.
priority list. But on the other hand, we also want that short-term list to be able to change almost meeting to meeting, depending on what we learn, and not have to go through a whole new evaluation before we can change that
I agree.
criteria.
And it's helpful
So-
because we have almost an entirely we will have almost
Yeah.
a majority of a new OSAC, so I think that's gonna be really helpful to do in 2019.
But I agree. I think in the first quarter, we should develop the criteria for both the short and long term. And I'll reword this. But then do we also want to do the evaluation in Q1 as well? Like just separate them out as two
I would
items?
do it as a separate thing, but I think we can do both. Once we get the criteria, it should be quick to evaluate.
Man, this thing is sticky. The keys just are, they're hard to use, not used to it. Okay, the other idea I had to put in here was something around Shan Shan.
Yes.
I was gonna say, the reaching out, we said first quarter, right? Reaching out to the committees.
Develop and execute on Shan Shan input. That doesn't flow off the tongue, but it's, what are we missing there
From other town committees or something like that.
from other town? Yeah.
Well, it's not just input, it's input on what? What are we getting input on? Deep input on trailhead, well, yeah,
Design
amenities.
amenities.
Yeah. And execute on Shan Shan. Develop an extension.
And we're not talking infrastructure design, we're talking,
What's that?
we're not talking infrastructure design because that's already done. We're talking about design.
No, well, but we might be with,
Landscape, no.
or bathrooms or gazebos.
Well, that's
or-
more amenities, right? That's the amenities part.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I don't think we need to put in design, I think we
Okay,
just say
yeah,
amenities.
that's a good point.
Maybe instead of saying develop and execute on, we say solicit
Mhm.
Shan Shan amenities input from other
Yep.
committees.
Or solicit, they're not all committees, right? They're.
Committees and commissions.
Commissions, council.
There you go, those three, the three Cs.
From other town entities,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Town
say.
groups.
town groups, yeah.
Leave it more open-ended, because,
Yeah.
I mean, we can.
Town volunteer
Because then it
groups.
could be Boy Scouts or Eagle
Yeah.
Scouts or.
Don't forget the Girl Scouts.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
Yeah.
Don't forget
Brownies.
the Girl Scouts.
Okay. Other things in the first quarter?
I actually want to look at number 7, that's on the second quarter, the evaluating outreach and ed opportunities, because it's something that, it's coming up a little bit later in our agenda, actually, I think next. But I'm wondering if we want to look at it more closely in first quarter so that, I'm not really sure, because I wasn't part of it, why it's evaluating the outreach and education opportunities. I would like to see us doing a little bit more than just the one shot, once a month education, and that's something, again, I want to talk about a little bit later. And I'm wondering if it's something that we could put in first quarter, but maybe we wait until we get a little bit further down.
I think sometimes too, traditionally, it happens in that second quarter because our first event that the committee typically attends is Arbor Day. And it kind of kicks off what the group speaks with the community about and what their targets were. And I think that's why it ended up in that second quarter, was because once the events start rolling, they've already created the menu of what they're going to talk about.
I mean, you could move, it does seem odd that it's number 7, like the last thing we're gonna do. And if we're gonna keep it in the second quarter, we should move it up, at least to the first part of the second quarter.
Or have it done in the first quarter, ready.
Yeah, I
Right.
Arbor
mean,
Day.
that's kind of.
Either way, yeah.
So I thought number 7 in the second quarter was what the fauna and flora thing was supposed to be. So that's why I was like, don't we have that twice?
Remember the flora and fauna started with the 2-pronged antelope or something, like that's where
Yeah,
originally.
and fireflies and.
And now the mink, not
The
mink.
mink, yeah, black
No,
ferret.
ferret, thank you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I would say this is more the outreach opportunities rather than the education, because the education we're gonna determine tonight
Right.
for next year. So maybe we change outreach, because it is, we said we wanna focus on dog poop
Right.
and Rocky Mountain Greenway when we go to Arbor Day, Chili
Okay.
Fest and 4th of July. So.
So make them two distinct.
Yeah, I think
Items.
that might be a good change. I think that's, I think that is cleaner, and I would be open to putting it in the first quarter. We would do it later in the first quarter, and it doesn't mean we have to finish it
Right.
in the first quarter, so.
Yep, I agree.
People agree? You wanna
Yep.
move it up?
Move it.
Okay. So let's move into second quarter.
Dole, did we want to do add something in there about the HHR analysis and what we're going to do with that information in first quarter? Because we need to come to a resolution here quick in first quarter on that. I mean, time marches on and we still don't have enough information, and we're trying to get it so we can get it to the board and before anything else happens with that land. So I feel like we really need to put it as not an ongoing item, but a first quarter item to really say, here's a stake in the
Finalize.
ground.
I guess my only concern there is if that final development plan comes second quarter or third quarter,
What?
you know, that's the whole point of this, would be able to provide the input to make sure that the final development plan meets those ecological requirements that we have.
So why wouldn't you want it in the first quarter before that comes out?
Well, because then we can't really do it in the second, like, why wouldn't it just be an ongoing, like, it could be an ongoing task, like we've had it before, right?
Yeah, but we're further along at this point, and we're coming to conclusion on it. That's my thing. I don't think it's an ongoing. I think it needs to be highlighted in a quarter. But ongoing, it gets lost in all that stuff. Ongoing means it's not important. It's ongoing. It's important, but it's ongoing. Whereas if you put it into a quarter, it really emphasizes the point, which is my point.
I guess my concern becomes, this is a lot for 3 meetings in the
Well,
first quarter.
Okay, so you can put, oh gosh, we could move something to second quarter, I'm sure. I mean,
We can just put
like
the
number
outreach.
2 that's an easy, it's not much. That's gonna be like, I mean, it's more, Allison, more a footnote for Allison as something, when can we schedule that into the board's, plans at that point, right? There's really nothing actionable for us to do there. It's more of it needs to be done, but it's not something we can do. It's something staff does for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is
Takes 3
10 minutes
seconds.
of a meeting.
Mhm.
This is just, okay, when can we meet?
Right. These
This,
are
I
kind
mean,
of a
and this we do
checklist.
first quarter and second quarter. I mean, we're just basically starting
Yeah.
this in Q1.
Right.
You know, this usually doesn't take that much time. I mean, it's usually 20, 30 minutes in a meeting. I actually think this is okay. Okay?
I don't think there's gonna be anything for the Hodgson Harris Reservoir Ecological Study after Q1 anyway, unless the timeline changes, that town staff was anticipating.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just not timely and useful anymore, because we need it before.
That's what he was saying, Monty
Oh,
Rowell. He's like, that's
yeah.
why he wants to put it first quarter, because it gets lost in the ongoing.
Yep.
And, yeah, okay. Second quarter, develop budget recommendations for outreach and education events. I mean, I guess Allison or Ken, do you remember, is this, I mean, we now have a fixed budget for our operations. I mean, do we really need to make recommendations?
So
I
the
mean, not,
the recommendation would relate to something large.
okay,
So-
so almost projects here
Yeah.
for, like I almost think we could remove these, since those just fit into our $5,000 stipend or whatever you want to call it, and then for larger town projects.
I think that's like where we came up with Shan Shan Trailhead,
Yeah.
you know, a couple of years ago.
I would like notation left on there though of deciding who's going to COSA, just so it doesn't get
I
forgotten.
think we have that
Somewhere?
up in Q3. Yep,
Okay.
second quarter. There it
Perfect.
is. Nope. Sorry.
So are we okay?
Oh, yeah, it is.
We're moving these three now that we have the budget and we've, okay, done that.
So instead of larger town project, can you say town open space project?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yep,
Semantics.
yep. Okay. So this one is just that Boulder, is this the Boulder County review that we do every year? It seems like we did this in third quarter this year.
It all depends on when they come and ask.
Okay, so let's just leave it.
And when we have time to collaborate with ProStaff.
Okay.
I think, so we've been doing National Trails Day on the first Sunday in June, right?
Mhm.
So we can say near June 2nd.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
2019.
Is that the?
Yep.
Is that when that Sunday is? Okay. Thank you.
And should we change number 4 to leadership meeting?
Yeah, I was
ProStack,
gonna,
since
we
we've
needed
never-
to talk about that because
Yeah.
I've
we
never
put
actually
this
met
on our
them.
work plan and then ProStack
Didn't want to do a full
want to-
meeting.
Didn't feel like we needed to. I think that the processes this year worked well, and I don't feel like we created extra work for the board with how we did our trail rankings and everything. I mean, that was a hot topic a year ago when we were putting together our work plan. So how about, I do agree that the leadership meeting worked well. We got
Shouldn't that-
everything moved forward that we wanted to.
Shouldn't it be moved to first quarter though? Because it seemed like we were late in the game with that template because we didn't have leadership come together to come up with a template before they had already propagated out to their committee. And then as a result, we had to repeat a lot of stuff. So I think we need to move, if we were gonna leave it, we need to move it to first quarter.
Kind of already have.
Like February, because I don't want to have to go through this yet in another year of, well, we didn't quite get to that before they had already sent it out.
I don't know,
So I think that had to do with just the personnel.
Okay, enough said.
I mean, we have,
Yeah, I think it'll be okay. So
I'm holding you to that.
we met with Corey and Jacques, God, I guess it was third quarter even
It was
this year.
third quarter. It was-
And they were both very much on board of not wanting to waste time on our 5-year trail plan and ranking things that don't make sense. We updated it that week and have a updated version, I believe.
yeah, we did, right? We removed all the old ones. That
Yeah.
Now we shouldn't be ranking.
So it should already be okay, but there's been a fairly good working relationship. I mean, Ryan, you correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree. I thought it was a
Yeah.
great meeting. But we do have, I mean, we have meet with ProStack leadership already. I mean, we do need to do this once a year. This seems,
I say just drop it.
but where in here do we have actually to do the trail ranking work?
Number 3?
Trail priorities plan.
But that's open space, not the trails. But the open space acquisition priorities, like, we do both trails and open space with Boulder, right?
Right, but that's the specific BOCO document, the other,
Man, did we really not have that listed this year?
yeah, that's
I
weird.
think that this was kind of it.
Yeah, I do too. Oh, that's right. That was the point of that
Mhm.
meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They asked
Was
us
to do, right? So I think we need to maybe,
Just update 5-year trails plan.
yeah, something like,
Yes, that's much more straightforward.
I mean, this isn't necessarily for BOCO. I mean, this is really for the board, correct? I mean, I don't know if we need to, I mean, what do do you think
Well,
about
I
that?
think it's for both, to be honest, so you can just leave it off, yeah.
If you leave it
Because we
open.
do end up using that for BOCO
Mhm.
later on.
Yep. Okay. My thought was that we should add, we could add something in Shan about here, right? We've got the input from the groups, but then we could say, finalize or out to bid, out for, have it ready for bid in Q2.
The amenities, design, all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like finalize what we're gonna, finalize the plan by the end of Q2.
Yeah, I keep it general, just say finalize.
Well, would that give us enough outreach opportunity? I mean, we only have, Arbor Day and Trails Day to get public feedback. Do we need any more than that? We wouldn't have it from Chili Fest or?
Right, but like Kate said, we can start with the advisory committees and then decide what we want to do thereafter. And if we need more input from the rest of the community, we could do that independent of Arbor Day.
And if time allows it and it bleeds into Q3, I think that's the end of the world.
Okay.
Okay. Third quarter, or anything else in second quarter?
Yeah, so I thought it might be good to kind of continue to pursue regional collaboration with other open space committees, and then we list, or I think we need to specifically call out in Q2 who we want to reach out to of other open space committees, whether it's Jeffco, BOCO, Louisville, Broomfield. I would like to call that out early instead of being an ongoing thing, because I think we need to get these people on our agendas early on in the year if we want to actually have a collaboration between these other communities, so that we begin these dialogues. Like, we didn't get a chance to do that this year with, I forget who we were talking about targeting, Broomfield or.
No, you're right.
And Louisville blew us off. Well, they didn't blow us off. They couldn't schedule us in, I guess. But I'd like to at least make that a priority early in the year instead of just ongoing. And I would like to get commitments, particularly if we can get it from Broomfield again, it'd be nice. And even Jeffco, to be honest.
Yeah, I
there's a-
second the Jeffco and Broomfield. That would be nice to do that sooner rather than later, given the CenturyLink
Based
parcel.
on what we're going through now, yeah.
Okay. Third quarter. I mean, all these look good, and third quarter tended to be lighter. And what tends to happen is some of these things kind of slip down into third quarter. I mean, we have quite a bit in the first two, but I think that's okay, having a lighter third quarter.
We'll also have a lot in the ongoing
Yeah.
that bleeds in as
Well,
well.
Shan will be beginning construction in third quarter, right? So, no, second quarter? Third quarter, yeah.
August or, yeah.
So, I don't know if there's anything to highlight there, monitor progress or what, signage or. We need to make sure we have a name by third quarter.
So I just have some other ideas that I'm just gonna put in here. Right, we discussed that that'll need maintenance as we learn more. One that I think is really worth discussing was on Town 15. When we were discussing last time about how much should we be proactive about making recommendations for what to use that property. And Trustee Hammerly felt pretty strongly that it would be in our best interest to work with ProStack to come up with a plan that we both agreed upon would be a good plan for the property, would be better received by the board than if we had to go in with conflicting plans and that the board had to decide. So do we want to, we can lump that into a leadership meeting to see, where do we have it's in the second quarter.
Yeah.
You know, or we can call it out as, I mean, we obviously need to get their buy-in, that they're willing to do that, so I don't know.
I would say let's put in the leadership meeting, especially because whatever outreach to the community will occur, we don't know what's gonna come of that, and who knows, maybe something outside of OSAC and ProStac is what the community reaches for, and us trying to I guess, just coordinate with ProStac becomes less important. I mean, I think it's still good, but
Okay.
I think it's a good leadership
I
meeting.
just have
I
to
agree.
remember to do that in the leadership meeting. I'll pull that out of the notes. And if you could take a note of that,
Yeah.
just to make sure that I'll keep a list of leadership topics for next time, but I just don't want to forget that one because I think that's pretty important. And I might actually, what I'm going to do, sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go look in each quarter and then I'll try to maybe prioritize them try to order them in the quarter also, rather than just a numerical, you know, try to have the numbers mean something of when we should be doing them in the quarter. I think that will help us because I think I would move this up, you know, earlier in the quarter, just
Yeah.
because it takes some time to schedule whatnot, so, okay. So those were the comments I had from my discussion, so anything else anyone wants to add?
On the topic of fracking, I don't know what other committees are gonna be monitoring this. Obviously, the board is going to be very on top of it, but is it something that we should have, a finger on the pulse as well? And if so, where does that fit for us?
I mean, so it sort of fits into this ongoing, right? Input on open space considerations, the development plans, but it's not specific to fracking because
Right.
of the relevance of that topic right now.
And it's not specific to the Rocky Mountain Greenway Trail, because
No,
as we just learned, it could be
I think that
anywhere.
I think that having a separate line item on, I mean, it flows nicely with the Rocky Mountain Greenway and oil and gas development.
Don't
in
forget Jefferson
Rocky
Parkway.
Flats. Oh, yeah. Maybe we do need to lump those all together. Maybe
Mhm.
what we need to do.
I think all of this might also be good conversation for the board, the joint board meeting early in the year. I mean, the board's meeting Friday to discuss just positions on what to do oil and gas related going forward. So getting input from the board and direction on that might be useful.
I mean, it's all Rocky Flats related. You know, we can reword this to be Rocky Flats.
And I agree with that, but is there potential that this could pop up somewhere else in town?
Elsewhere.
Not related to Rocky Flats? I don't know.
Also, for our new people, this work plan goes before the board, and the board is able to add or subtract items from it and kind of give us a red line, and then we make our adjustments and continue on with the year with this work plan.
One of the things that I've been thinking about, you know, in terms of this whole oil and gas development and, you know, the idea that we'd be acquiring not only the CenturyLink property, but making an offer for the mineral rights too, is let's just assume that we're unsuccessful and CenturyLink doesn't want to sell. And let's also assume that other properties in town end up not being for sale. And we're in this conundrum where we're going to continue to accrue $500,000 to $600,000 a year in, you know, sales tax proceeds. Can we use open space funds to buy the mineral rights in Superior and in the periphery, like around Superior? I don't know if we can. I don't know if they'd be for sale. I have no idea what mineral rights cost, but it's something that I think at a minimum should be explored, because that would be, you know, one potential option to, you know, and I think it'd be fitting with the mission that, you know, you're still conserving and preventing, you know, industrial development that we may not necessarily otherwise be able to stop on, you know, open space parcels or other parcels in town, or parcels adjacent to town that would necessarily have like a negative effect on the town. So I think it's something that should be explored, and I mean, I don't know if it's a possibility, but it should be at a minimum looked into.
Well, don't you have the legal question of whether we can use our funds for that purpose?
Yeah, I mean, we will need to get direction from town council as to whether or not we can do that, but I mean, the purpose of the fund is to, you know, make acquisitions for purposes of open space preservation. You know, if we buy mineral rights for purposes of thwarting industrial development that we otherwise wouldn't be able to stop, that could potentially affect open space lands. I think like at least a good faith argument could be made that, you know, we could be doing it. And, you know, and if we can't, then maybe that's something that we go to the voters and ask them, can we have that authority? Because otherwise we're going to have this conundrum where we're going to continue to get all this money from sales tax proceeds. And if we get to the point where we can't actually acquire any more land because nothing's for sale and nothing's available, then what do? I mean, we shouldn't be just taking that money from sales tax proceeds if we can't actually use it for its purpose. So maybe we need to repurpose it. It's just a thought. I don't know if it has legs or not, but.
But I think we could put this in an ongoing thing, and then when we set up these different groups where we split up work, it seems like this could be a small group exercise to start thinking, maybe not even thinking about this, but asking the questions and making sure we start investigating how we would do this and getting a position paper essentially set up for that. Maybe it's not a paper, but I mean, it would be a lot of investigation, but I think we should, put it on the list. So I know we can remove work on Chan Chan Trailhead project because we now actually have that in the 2 quarters. But then open to other items. Now I will say this does feel like a lot of work. So I don't know if we should be tackling anything else huge, but we should discuss it if someone has ideas and wants to work on something.
Can we go back down to the ongoing?
Yeah, I didn't see, Ryan, did you add in the fracking or?
The mineral rights is the first one.
Oh, thank you.
So number 10 there, provide open space related feedback to the PROS master plan update. I think we also need to add in there to the PROS master plan update and comprehensive plan.
I don't know that they're doing the PROS master plan update anymore.
What do you mean?
That was something ProStack was
A
going
one-off?
to tackle, and I think they chose not to tackle that anymore. Is that true, Allison?
That's what I understand.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember. Pretty sure I remember Corey saying that. I thought.
Yeah, because we didn't do any work on this
No,
year.
and actually, what it was, so they were gonna do it as a committee. Got to the point of where they started to actually evaluate how they were going to do it. Realized it was going to be incredibly heavy lift, and they didn't necessarily have the expertise to be able to do it. And that if they were going to do it, they'd contract it out. Yeah, and I don't think there's budget for it. There isn't budget for it.
Why don't we just make it more open-ended then? Just say update when needed, right? So when needed, if needed, whatever you want to say, but I want to make sure that we are part of that process whenever it does occur, as well as the town comprehensive plan, because there are open space elements in both of those big documents that we should have input on no matter what, no matter when. I just want to make sure it's a standing item.
That's a good idea.
Sorry, can I go back to the fracking oil and gas stuff? So number 8, you put ongoing, I can see that oil and gas development on Rocky Flats, but it doesn't have, we don't have oil and gas development elsewhere in the town. And although that would be a small chance, do we want that? Like, do you want to put that up on number 1, investigate town funds being used for mineral rights acquisition and continually monitor for any oil and gas development, something like that? Or is that not something we're interested in?
I think we can just change it to any oil and gas development and not specify the on Rocky Flats.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, the reason I put these
He
all in
lumped them
one
all
line
together.
is this is all related to Rocky
Yeah.
Flats.
Is it Rocky Mountain Parkway or Jefferson Parkway?
Jefferson Parkway.
Oh, sorry, Jefferson. Thank you. Thinking of the Greenway. No, I mean, that is a subtle distinction.
I mean, I can't imagine that they're gonna do it on Zaharias, but I also didn't think that they were gonna attempt it on CenturyLink either, so, or wherever other open space parcel we have in town.
You're right, so I don't know if people
Want.
looked at that interactive map link where you can actually see where wells were put in and around Superior, but back in the mid-'80s, there were actually a couple right in Rock Creek that you can still see that they actually look like one like right underneath Rock Creek Parkway, and then another one that's just on one of the trails along McCaslin that was one of our trails where they actually had drilled. But also on the other side of McCaslin, on the open space, there was quite a few places that had drilled. So I don't know if Boulder County owns the mineral rights underneath all that open space that would have been Superior at one point in time. But it is still a possibility that they may just own the land and not the mineral rights underneath it. So I don't know if that is worth us also investigating to see if there's something west of us, just over on the other side of McCaslin, that could potentially be drilled. I imagine not, but it's still a possibility because I know that VOCO has issued a statement on their website on their stance of oil and gas on open space that, they are not for it, but if the mineral rights are owned by someone, they can't really do anything about it. So they do not always own the land and the mineral rights underneath that land.
So how about this? Continue to monitor any oil and gas development that could impact Superior residents.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's easy, right? It's ongoing. If nothing comes up, we don't have to do anything, but.
Right.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Allison, when do we need to submit this to the board? Is it by January 1st? I'm just wondering how much time I have to clean this up before I get it back to you.
What we could do is, I can clean it up too, with just the numbering and.
Yeah, I was gonna play with the order a little bit, so I can do it in the next couple days.
If we have it,
I just like to have a due date to you, that's all.
typically we approve it and we put it in our notes. And then that's kind of how the ball gets rolling.
Oh, okay.
Is that we would approve it tonight and we would attach it to our notes and then.
So that means we should do the cleanup.
Well, I think what
Or when the notes are completed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, okay.
With cleanup.
Yeah, okay.
Later.
But so then we should, yeah.
Can I go back to just
Tracy.
Vanessa's Raptor?
Oh, yeah.
So you're not gonna continue to develop it. You're going to develop and what, maintain it, develop and, like, you're not just gonna continue
Yeah,
to
that's
develop it
true.
all year long?
Continue to run it, continue to.
Develop and execute,
Support,
maintain, support. Bless you.
Or implement.
Yes,
Implement.
there we go. Develop and implement, Superior.
You could say the Superior Volunteer Raptor Monitoring Program, since it's, I don't know.
Okay. So do we need to do a formal approval process on this, or do we need to say any objections, or okay? Does
As long
everyone
as
feel
we're
like
good.
this is complete?
I remember last year we just had to have quorum, that's all I know.
Okay.
Got quorum.
We definitely got quorum.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, board plan done. That's a huge one to get done, so appreciate everybody coming with ideas and helping us work through this. Anything, Allison?
Save.
Oh, yeah, I've been saving often and, yeah, all the time, so. So can you give me a copy of this and I'll clean it up? Okay.
I could send it to you.
Perfect, yeah, not tonight, I don't need it tonight. Okay, so the last big one we need to get through is the outreach, or basically the education program events for 2019 that we started last time. Do you have that list, Allison? Is it close by here?
No, I just have it from our email exchange.
Okay,
In my hands. And we had a couple of, conversations going on via email. I can read them off, what we have, what we went over last time, the months that we have and what we currently offer. One of the interesting things is, people did notice that Coyote information was heavy, but that was created, it was kind of created separately. So Coyote was one large education component because we did have a lot of Coyote activity in town, which we do every other year or every year. It just depends on, birth or families that are in the area. And these two items were very separate because we had this Coyote education piece that was part of wildlife encounters with residents and, teaching around hazing, what to do for coyotes in your yard or around your home. And then the other half was outdoor education outreach around, like, for example, birds and raptors and owls, or, different hikes for tracks, and some of the more, like, wildlife components of education for children and families. And also older active adults participating in hikes and programs, as an opportunity to be social and learn new things about community and kind of our ecosystem in the area. I did talk to Ashley, and we were kind of brainstorming, and we, every year we come up with something new. For example, the night hikes were new recently. So she said some possible new topics were beavers and water quality was an interesting topic, and a nature scavenger hunt, food web scavenger hunt, black-tailed prairie dog ecology, prairie plants and animals. She's totally open to suggestions if anybody's looked at any programs. That's kind of how we came up with the bat hike and the owl hike. Is, I found something somewhere and I was like, oh, night hikes, let's do this. Kids will love that, because you don't usually get to go out in the parks at night because they're closed. But if it is a town offered and a committee offered program, you are allowed to go in the parks in the evening, which is kind of fun. So really, we have a lot of opportunities to make changes, especially if we wanted to replace the bug hunt like we talked about at our last meeting. And, we can do any ideas anybody has.
I think someone pointed out there were some holes in there. There were periods where we were doing nothing.
Correct, and so we contract with Ashley for a certain number of programs. We always offer an extra program that we can use for something else or a different event if we want. And this year, I think Vanessa's training material is going to be reviewed by Ashley, and once that's completed, that'll be our extra for the year. But if we do add more, there are those 3 months, November, December, which a lot of people are out of town, weather can be an issue, and then March, but typically it's only those 3 months, but we do have the extra one. So if we wanted to add one more, we could do a March or a November or a December without incurring more cost. So, if we wanted to add 3 more programs, we could figure out the cost and go to the board for payment of that cost. So,
Do you have any idea how much that would cost? Like a guesstimate?
I don't know, maybe $200 per program or more. I'm not sure, because it would be a matter of what type of program, if materials are needed for the program. Like, for example, for bug hunt in the beginning, we bought magnifying glasses and nets and things like that. So it just depends on the program type and how much training material needed to be compiled and the time for that.
Do we pay Ashley by the hour, or is there a contract, or?
No, it's a contract for this specific number of events. And she's also, part of her contract is for residents who have encounters with, say, raccoons in their bird feeders or anything for, she makes specific calls to individual residents as part of our wildlife coexistence plan to mitigate any types of problems residents have. One-on-one, she'll come out to their house, she'll call them and kind of walk them through what to do.
So if we could get Jeff and Paige off our books, then we could afford 3 more programs, because that's a huge cost. Plus, we're double booked in June with Trails Day and Jeff and Paige.
Well, Jeff and Paige did not impact OSAC's budget.
Oh, it didn't? I thought it cost
And
us.
Ashley's contract technically does not impact OSAC's $5,000 budget. It comes from the open space budget. We, you know, it was asked for that to be separated out because it was ongoing expenses and events that were over and above what, you know, OSAC's training or their your swag or National Trails Day or one of those other covered costs, because the amounts were so much larger than a typical committee because of these special things. It was a different budget line.
But Jeff and Paige comes out of our 5,000, right?
It did
come
not
from?
this year.
Where did it come from?
Open
Just
space.
from the
Open
general-
Space Fund?
Can you read her 3 suggestions again?
Sure.
Oh, she had a bunch, didn't she? She
Well,
had more than-
like more than 3.
Beavers and water quality, nature scavenger hunt, food web scavenger hunt, black-tailed prairie dog ecology, prairie plants and animals. And those are some of the things we talked about on the phone, and she added some stuff, so.
Does she ever do anything with like, open play? Like, it's as simple as it sounds, where a parent or parents come with kids and there's somebody leading and they just let kids be in nature and don't try and guide them in any way. Does she ever do anything like that?
I'm sure she could.
Okay.
I mean, bug hunt is a little bit like that because you're running around and you're looking at all these different areas for critters. So it's kind of like that.
Okay. Does she ever, do you know if she does any like forest bathing or like nature bathing, which is a very hippie term, but it's
No, I know what
really
you're talking about.
like bathing, where you basically, somebody guides you through a nature experience, but you are just experiencing what you hear, smell, potentially taste, all of those things.
And you're
It's a
fully
par-
dressed.
I mean, I think if we're sponsoring it, then yes. I would say yes.
I know exactly what you're talking about, and I'm so
Okay.
confident that she could do anything like this. We just need to come up with the idea, talk to her about it, and she will create any type of program, and especially if, you know, there's a program that you're aware of that's already organized, that would be, you know, she is a teacher. So that would be the first one.
The water quality one, what was that one?
Beavers and water
Beavers.
quality.
I thought that one sounded really something I would go do. I like that one.
So I'm in favor of having something per month, personally. I think surrounding towns do that. If we can afford it, I think that'd be cool for our committee to be able to sponsor. It sounds like we got plenty of awesome ideas right there. I'm not gonna even share what my ideas were, so, because those are awesome. But my opinion is, if we can fill in the empty months, you know, are we missing July too? So March, July, November, and December, is that right?
Well, so Jeff and Paige Falls Funny, we'll end up doing 2 programs, one in early June and one in late June or July. And I think the committee this year revised the Jeff and Paige timeline because of
Something.
something, closeness of you know.
So what process would we have to go through to get more budget?
4th of July, maybe. I'm sorry.
What process would we have to do to expand the budget for this?
We would just have to make a
Yeah.
budget request.
We need to do full budget amendment because this 2019 budget's already been approved.
Yeah, I'd rather not. Seems like that's a big, I mean, it seems like that is potentially a lot of work.
I mean,
For-
I know it always gets summed up at the end of the year.
It's up to the group, what you would like to do.
But we need to get this wrapped up tonight. I mean, we started it last time, it has to be done. So we really need to decide tonight what we're gonna do. And, you know, it's
Does
getting
anyone
late.
else?
We do need to wrap this up.
Yeah, I agree with you. Does anyone else have any additional ideas for programming? Sean, I would like to know what yours are if you want to share them.
We are going to have
Yeah, and
raptor
Vanessa.
monitoring year round.
Vanessa says she's got some too.
So, all right, so a couple of my ideas. So we've been talking about HHR so much and the inhabitants. Why don't we actually formalize that into one of the monthly programs? We have experts that give all this great. They present it to us. Be great if that could be presented to the larger town of Superior. So that's one. Another one was the winter prairie and food sources. What do animals do in the wintertime? You know, endangered species along the Front Range. Now, granted, these are not interactive like a lot of the things that we've done. They're more program, sit and listen kind of things. So I don't know how well that go over. You know, talking about elk and bighorn sheep and bears and that kind of stuff that when people come to Colorado, and prairie dogs, when they come to Colorado, those are the things that they want to see or expect to see. So something about that maybe. Spiders, I don't know if, have we even talked on arachnids? Okay, so spiders of Colorado.
That's always on
I don't,
social media.
in my opinion, you can never get enough snakes, but I know we go over that on Trails Day, but I mean, some people can't make it to Trails Day, so it might be nice to have it as another time. And then, of course, like I said, prairie dogs, but you could do prairie dogs versus ferrets or raptors or snakes, so it's like man versus food, but it's prairie dogs versus predators.
Well, you know, and one thing to think about though is like the snake aspect specifically, or like the birds of prey like we do at National Trails Day would not be part of Ashley's contract. It would be
Separate.
right, and like your HHR experts would not be part of her program. And so what I need to do, I mean, we could do all that too, but what I also need to focus on is getting what we want her to do so that we can formalize that agreement before the beginning of the year.
So I think that just to try to get this focused, we need to decide, are we gonna, we know, like, we like the list except for the bug hunt. So we knew we wanted to replace one with the bug hunt, at least that's how I was reading into this. And then decide if we wanted to try to ask for budget for 2 more. That's really what it, or, oh yeah. Well, replace bug hunt, but then ask for budget for 2 more, or would it be 3 more to fill in?
Well, not necessarily, because if we all decided on the snake guy, that wouldn't come,
Right, exactly.
right? So
Correct.
it wouldn't be phrased the same way.
Right, but that, and I'm not sure, I mean, either we would have to request from outside of OSAC's budget, or the snake, an extra snake program would come out of OSAC's budget.
Right.
So I think we should try to stay focused on Ashley. I think having the deadline that we do have, I mean, and we pretty much need to do it here though, right? Not via email outside of this meeting, so.
So are we just trying to decide, are we contracting her for 9 months? Is that?
Well, that's, I guess the first decision is, do we want to ask for more money to do 3 additional events from Ashley?
I don't think Ashley is who we'd want to necessarily do them though.
No, because, yeah, we wouldn't have to.
Yeah, so
I think we need to decide on what we want to do first. I think we need to decide on the programs first, and then based on that, then we can determine, is it Ashley and then others, or is it all
I just
Ashley?
don't hear any strong opinions of that anything that anybody really wants to do. I mean, people have ideas.
They all
but
sound
not
good.
strong,
That's the
right?
problem. There's so many good ideas.
Well, do we want to start with replacing Bug Hunt? Because we
Yes.
know it's had low attendance for 2 years. Is there a program that the group is really interested in for September, which is where Bug Hunt falls, usually on or around Chili Fest? That's that
I mean,
one.
I like the water quality one as well. I thought that was interesting,
Yeah,
so
I
that's
think
my vote.
That's my vote too.
Beavers or prairie dogs?
Yeah.
I'd say prairie dogs were also interesting to me. I'm
Yeah.
fine with water quality as well, though.
I want to throw my idea out.
Yeah.
Just because it's something I've wanted to mention since I started on the committee, and maybe it doesn't fit here, but because it's an enhancement thing too. I like the idea of her doing some kind of a flora, because it seems like everything's animals. But along with that, perhaps teaching people which weeds they can pull in our open space, and as an enhancement to our open space.
It's
That's something I do.
One year we did that cleanup and we actually, I don't know if anybody remembers Tori, but she was the liaison to Superior Youth Leadership Council. And we did a whole book for people to go out and do the creek cleanup and everything. And it had all the pictures of the fauna that we needed to get rid of, the noxious weeds and everything.
Exactly.
And I like that idea too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And water quality is always important.
And then
We
it
did a
works.
lot of that with dog waste too.
It's hard to get people to be interested in weeds maybe, but so maybe that's not the most
Yeah.
interesting thing, but it would tie into enhancement, and it's, I don't know, it's something some people do. I do it. And if we don't do it, our open space will be covered with thistles and goat heads.
It sounds like we have 3 good candidates. We have that, we have the beavers and water quality and prairie dogs. So we could go,
Just need one more.
I like the HHR idea. I mean,
I do too, and that goes well with the endangered species because, correct me if I'm wrong, there's endangered species out there.
Species of interest, not necessarily endangered.
What does that mean, endangered species of interest?
Ones that the state is monitoring,
Okay.
because they might become
Mhm.
endangered.
But just to set the expectations too, there is a fence where you can't really get up and around.
but they do
For-
tours of it through the fence. We may have to get permission from Saddlebrook over there to be on their property, inside their property, but I think we could do it.
But the fence around at HHR, we
Mhm.
can't go into that.
Sure,
Yeah.
I was thinking more on the other side of the fence, but in the Saddlebrook property.
Yeah,
we
if
could
you're in
still-
Saddlebrook, you can still get pretty darn close.
Yeah. It sounds like we have 4, so it sounds like we will ask for a
He
little
has
bit
an
extra
idea.
budget. Oh,
Yeah.
Just regarding HHR, I think Boulder County is going to do 2 programs out there in the coming year.
Oh.
So that may happen,
Any-
not via OSAC. but
so we could just
maybe
piggyback
Okay.
on them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Save some money.
Yeah.
And get the information out.
but that could
So
be,
It could be creative, it could be like coordinated effect, otherwise it was just a couple of people in Saddlebrook knew about it and sent to the email list, but that could be coordinated between BOCO and
Yeah.
OSAC.
We just need to know the month they're doing it. That's the big thing.
but how about we coordinate that one and we kind of call that our 4th? And if it doesn't work out, no big deal, but if it does, then it fills in the goal of having one thing a month.
Mhm.
So are we in agreement? Do we have a plan?
Sounds like.
We didn't get any of Kate's fun ideas in there.
Mine, I think, are gonna be better to come up in January, so. Truly, they're more about, like, all of these ideas are kind of a one-shot of learning about whatever the topic is. And I envisioning doing something more consistent and having more consistent community, activities. So like the one I've come up with actually, stems from I can't remember what it's called now, but the trash pickup day, of doing something like a cleanup event every month where families can come out and clean up, but learn about a different part of Superior, a different trail or a different area or something of that sort. So just having it be something that's happening consistently, and we're not starting it in January. It's not gonna happen then because it's too cold anyway. You don't start anything outside in
Right.
January, but I think it would be really cool to start kind of having, those regular engagement opportunities, so.
And that sounds like it's a more OSEC driven, Ashley driven anyway.
Yeah, correct.
Well, and I guess the question is, if we have ideas where individual committee members have like really
Mhm.
great interests and have horsepower to do like a raptor program or a trail cleanup, do we, maintain this contract where it is and take opportunities like in March, or try to juggle around to free up some months in the more prime weather times for those and move some of Ashley's programs into a different month? I mean, which we can do.
I mean, for the trash cleanup idea, it would be more of once it gets started, it's gonna be offered every single month in addition to whatever else we are already
Third
doing.
Saturday of
Yes,
every month.
exactly. That it's just a standing event that people can participate in.
And then you'll just send out a list of 12 places to meet each month.
Correct.
I'd like to see a future program on the effects of climate change on our animals.
And we talked about that at one point. There's a guy from NCAR who presented at Louisville, I think. When we met with Louisville several years ago, they had, I'm pretty sure it was an NCAR scientist, do something similar. So we could reach out to
I think
Louisville
that
and
would
see.
appeal to people,
Mhm.
So are you suggesting we drop one of the 4 that we identified to add that, or
So
what?
It's up to the group, but it's an area that would interest me.
Well, is
That
that,
could easily be done too in like our community room in December or January. So if we did want to do some talk type, indoor
Mhm.
education, we could always use our community room and the sports table for that.
It's kind of hard to go on the trail in December.
so that would replace what, the bug hunt, potentially?
Or,
Or
if we wanted March,
November.
November, December, if there were 3 ideas, like
The cold
those
months,
type.
yeah.
Yeah, and then if we wanted to change bug hunt to water quality, or, one of the other ones where you really wanted to be outside, I don't know.
I thought my memory served Sean and Ken. Do you remember that he did that for free? I thought that's what Louisville said, but.
Yeah, I
Free
think,
is good.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that one came for free.
It was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we can investigate that, I guess, and that doesn't have to be additional budget item.
Yeah.
So do we want bug hunt to be beavers and water quality?
I recommend we just go with that.
Sure.
Okay, in September.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that I'm going to need Ashley to look at my training, because I don't foresee that I'm going to need to do a training because I have such a small group. Unless I'm doing a program where it's open to the community and I'm teaching them about raptors in our community, or she is.
Well, we do have that extra one every year.
If
that
it's-
we need assistance with anything, and we want to do something else.
Right, so something else
So
may
it's
come
a
up.
card.
I
that
just
we
want
could
to.
use that for.
Right, that's what I'm trying to say. I wouldn't need that part of the budget, I don't think.
I think we got it.
All right, cool, good.
Does that look good?
Allison, do you have everything you need?
I was gonna say.
Clear as
So all
mud.
I've
Clear as mud,
done-
yeah.
All I've done is changed our bug hunt in September to the fever and water quality. And the other 3 months, is there gonna be a request put forward?
Yeah,
So,
I think that's what I heard from the group, and that there's so we need to make a recommendation. Okay.
Well, don't we need to first figure out who the vendors are for these, so we know whether, it sounds like some of these might be free. I don't know that we actually need to put forth a recommendation for a request.
Right, if we're not gonna have Ashley do these 3 months, then we don't need to worry about it. But if we are, then we should make a budget request, 'cause she won't do it, she'll be an increased charge.
I mean-
Agreement.
But it sounds like the noxious weed one probably would be Ashley.
But if Vanessa doesn't need her assistance for raptors, then that's
Then
the
we
wild
could
card.
do that
right?
in, say, March, maybe? I don't know, growing plants.
Yeah, I don't think March.
Yeah, it's not a good
Yeah.
one.
And I think that's probably what we kind of ran into, because we do our winter hikes, we do our coyote hikes, because you can see their tracks in the snow, and it's not just coyote hike, but it's animal tracks and
things like that. And so if we're gonna do,
I think we should just do the ones that are slated for indoor presentation, and those cold ones. At
Well,
least
you
for
can do
those
prairie
groups.
dogs anytime though.
Yeah.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah,
Depending
and
on what you do with them. but-
beavers and water quality, just a note, okay, good point. A note on that, if we want this to be Superior focused, do we have, like, any beaver in Superior?
I'd be
I know.
surprised.
Yeah. I think it would be a great topic, but it's something to think about.
but, you know, nature scavenger hunt, you know, if you wanted to, I mean, she had, you know, even the black-tailed prairie dog, you know, would you be able to find one? I know that they had one at HHR, didn't they? Or were they reintroducing them in the Boulder County open space?
You're talking about.
You're talking about the ferret.
Oh, black-footed ferret, sorry. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Prairie dogs everywhere.
Right, we need to,
I was gonna
we're gonna
say-
be here till midnight if we don't, if we don't wrap this up. So it sounds like there may be more interest in something around prairie dogs. So should we just shell something in around prairie dogs instead of water quality?
Okay.
But then what do we, do we really want to ask for more? Because it sounds like we could maybe fit more in through the year without needing to change Ashley's contract.
I think it would be
Right.
best to try to squeeze it in with free or volunteer type
Yeah.
presentations rather than
I
commercial
agree.
And
presentations.
Vanessa could probably do a raptor presentation with all of her great data and everything at the end of the year. It might be really
Actually,
fun.
yeah, that's a great idea.
Definitely could.
Okay.
So is the bug hunt changed to beavers or prairie
No,
dogs?
something prairie dogs.
Prairie dogs.
Prairie
Prairie
dogs.
dogs.
Prairie dogs,
Yes.
okay.
Prairie dog
And
and
then-
black-footed ferrets.
That's awesome.
Prairie dogs.
Can we combine the two?
Whatever you guys want.
Let's just go with prairie dogs, and if it gets worked into it, great. Let's wrap it up.
But for the extra money, she could do the flora and fauna if that is deemed necessary, right? Because you're not gonna need her, so she
Yeah, we
could do
can
that.
choose that extra one.
And then-
Later in the year.
A month that we wanted in,
Perfect.
that will have flora and fauna.
Okay, and then we'll reach out to the NCAR scientists and see if he can do it for free. Okay, so we're done?
I think so.
Good summary.
I think we're done.
I don't know, are we done with this topic anyway?
This topic. The rest of them, I think, will go fairly quick, so I'm gonna move on. So on the Superior Open Space Status Document, we talked about this last time. I think we all agreed that we wanna maintain this and keep going on this with the notes that we have on this. The two things we need to decide is this needs an owner. I'm not gonna own both this and the trails doc, so I need a volunteer that's willing to, whenever we talk about a property in a meeting, make sure that the notes get added, down to the bottom of what we discussed, and then figure out ways to, eventually this list will get pretty long. Maybe we don't want to summarize it by meetings, but this needs an owner. So it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but as we dole out responsibilities in January, this will be one that needs an owner.
Say we give it to the new person that takes over Ken's spot.
Hey, Peter.
Just saying.
The other, Allison,
Nothing is official yet.
the other piece of this that we were struggling with was how to get the data from town staff when they do reach out to a property owner, right? That is an important piece we'd like to capture in here. And so the question for you will be, is there a way that we think that the town staff will be able to provide this to us? And if the answer is no, and it's not gonna work out, then we can figure that out, but.
Well, I'm not sure how it would go, but typically, we have one person that reaches out. So if, we figure out some type of process
Okay.
where that can be
So
covered.
do we need to make a recommendation, not to the board, but maybe, is this something we don't need to decide this tonight, right? This can be decided as we're working through it next year, but just something to think about, because this is something we discussed that's
Right.
missing from this.
And at the last meeting, we talked about that we were gonna complete the document and then give it to Allison, and she was gonna give us those remaining links, like
Right.
when did they contact on this property, who contacted, and what was the plan?
Well,
et
but
cetera, et cetera.
but
So
I'm not,
Are you thinking something else?
no, I'm not sure that towns agreed to do that, that staff's agreed to do that. That's
Well,
what
if I
I'm
have
trying
the
to get.
list And I give it, to who is making the contacts for different.
hard part, we don't know when the contact happens, so we don't know when to ask for updates. It's
Well-
almost training them to let us know that contact was
Right.
made and here's what happened.
So you're wondering ongoing, but we can start from the get-go, like, here's every parcel, when did town staff reach out? But then you're wondering ongoing, like, how can
Mhm.
we be notified? Yeah, I agree with you on that. That might take a recommendation, I don't know.
Or, I'm trying to think of, if it would even be feasible quarterly.
Yeah, maybe it's we request
touch
it,
base.
or once a half, maybe even, or when we know that something's happening. So maybe we just need to learn to ask as part of the document owner. No,
No, I feel like
It
we,
could go either way.
Well, I
you know,
think,
having that process
so let's
in
get an
place.
owner of this and have them own the process and see what works.
Or if we even have a list of what we know we're touching base on, then that could be the flag, for.
Yeah, because I don't know how far they're gonna be able to go back for us, Tracy, right? We say we wanna know their touch points, but are we
they
asking back
have, they're,
10 years?
they're
I
very
mean,
knowledgeable. I mean, you guys are. The historical data in everyone's head is pretty detailed. So it may not be an exact month, but they can say, this year we contacted this person and they didn't want to sell and they never wanted us to contact them again or something like that,
Just don't know how far back they'll be able to go.
Sure.
I mean, but we could just see whatever brain dump they have
Or the
for
most
us.
current information.
Yeah, maybe, or the most recent.
That.
Yeah, that's all we need is the last time
I
they touched
think
base.
that's what we need.
We don't need
Yeah,
it.
okay. So the action item there is that we need to get this over to you and just to ask on these 8 properties, when was the last, I mean, this shouldn't be that hard. And CenturyLink, we know the answer because TPL just reached out on 76 on that one. We know the answer because they
Yep.
just reached out and we just got an answer tonight. So it really isn't, Saharias, we probably won't get an answer because there's an
Right.
active development plan, right?
It shouldn't.
Rogers. Anyway, I don't think this will be hard, so, okay.
We got an answer tonight?
On
Yeah.
what?
76.
On the 76th Street parcel.
Oh,
Yeah.
that one, okay.
Yep.
And then just circling back and adding this to the list of ownership items in January.
Yeah, that is something I definitely
Or
need
if we put it on
to,
our ongoing work plan too.
I have it on there. I made a subtle change while people weren't looking.
Oh,
what? Maintain the superior trails and open space continuity
saw that.
documents.
I saw
So we have a
you.
trails continuity document and an open space
Right.
continuity
And
document.
if that's like our trigger too, to like.
Yeah. The thing I've learned from maintaining the trails doc is that you have to be thinking about that in each meeting. Okay, did we talk about any trails? Okay, let me go back and update that document after the meeting. It's, as the owner, you kind of just think about it that way, so.
I'm happy to own this if no one else wants to, because I think it ties in with Trust for Public Land
Okay.
and reaching back, but if someone else is super passionate about it, that's fine too.
So I was just gonna suggest that it might be better for one of the newer members to take this on.
I'm willing to.
Because they're the ones that are learning, and this is really for the newer people, and then they would learn best if whoever's newest that comes on actually takes over, and
Sure.
and then it rotates to the next newest person, the next newest person. It's just a suggestion, but
Yeah.
that's why
Yeah.
Ryan created it when he first came on.
Not to
Yeah,
take
it
it
was
away from
exactly-
Peter, but I am interested in properties, so I'm willing to take it.
Okay, well, we'll assign it out in January,
Yeah.
so, okay. Good, okay, we can get through the rest quickly. So updates and look ahead. So the reason we were cramming so much in is that we want to do a holiday or, a celebration at the next meeting. So instead of coming here, we want to go have dinner somewhere with the remaining funds that we have left in our budget. We're going to propose this time, the scheduled meeting time, since we think trying to schedule other time for everyone is going to be difficult. So if we can pick this time in December, we need to pick a restaurant. Does everyone like sushi? Does anyone not like sushi? Don't want to put anybody on the spot, but we were thinking, is it Misawa or
Misaki.
Misaki could be an interesting place to go, the new sushi place in town, and order up a spread. And if you don't, they have other food that isn't, raw fish based that we could do. So that was our initial thought. So I don't want to put anyone on the spot. We'll send an email out, and if you disagree, you can send a separate email and disagree, and we'll come up with something else. We don't want to make you feel bad if you don't like that food, so we
And we
can
did
find something.
Brunelleschi's last year.
Yeah, Brunelleschi's
And we've
is always
done
easy.
Old Chicago. I remember when Sandy was our liaison, we did Old Chicago.
So we'll throw that out there. If it doesn't work, great, but that'll be the plan. So we won't have a meeting next time. We can celebrate. Ken, I hope you will join us. You
Nope.
probably don't get paid for it out of the open space fund, but I'll chip in for your dinner.
So,
you can join us.
so Ken, I wasn't here when we first started, by the way, Sean Samuelson member. Ken, I just want to thank you for your time on open space and appreciate it, and good luck in your future board position.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, next, Allison, update on the, that trail along the Ridge condos and where town staff looked at developing that trail.
Yeah, I guess, from what I understand, there were, various alignments looked at in that space, in that area, and, some of the topics that, the board brought up was, the cost justifiable, especially due to the existing trail on the other side of the road, on the east side, and, that it was an expensive trail, and that the board had continued to be split on installing the trails on both sides of the road. I think that another aspect that was discussed was that the engineer that reviewed all of our expedited trails, and that was Trail A, had concerns about a steep drop or the grade in that area. And I think they looked at various spots along the side of the road. I don't think there was we didn't have an exact marked out trail for them to look at. They just looked at the feasibility of that trail in that general area.
Okay, so with the new downtown area coming in, the Rotary, and people actually starting to commute to Boulder using the bike path, with that new information and the new board members in mind, we might want to go back and reconsider this and actually, as OSAC members, maybe perhaps walk that area and mark out a potential trail where it would take into account ADA compliance, steep drops and all that stuff, and it would be potentially cost effective where you wouldn't have to do a lot of land moving. I think it's worth potentially rediscussing that, because I still believe there is a reasonable solution that is not cost prohibitive, that would give those people, I mean, it's nice to have the trail on the other side if you have a long leisurely day just to meander, but for those people that want to get places through commuting and whatnot, I still believe having, like we do up on the west side of McCaslin, heading south, I still think we should try to continue that beyond Key Bank up to the townhomes. Whether it's concrete, my preference would be concrete, but that would be expensive, of course. But just having a trail that, kind of like the HHR is to our wildlife corridor, this would be the end spot for human population, out of that space to downtown, et cetera. That wouldn't take them out and around and meandering. I know that has been something that has come up at Chili Fest, and I don't want to dismiss it based on.
I mean, have you been on that trail back there? It meanders a little bit, but it's not that.
Yeah, I look on Google Maps and everything. It goes. I've walked that trail a lot. It meanders.
I mean, yes, you're not along the road, but is it worth $500,000 to make a direct shot versus, I just really question.
I don't think it's going to cost $500,000.
Well, there's definitely work.
There's some work, but I don't think
let's
it's gonna
just push
cost.
this to the trail, like when we get into the trail rankings, this seems like it's the right time to readdress this.
But I think as committee members, I'd be happy to do it myself and walk it and mark it out if necessary, if that's what they're looking for. But I do believe there's an engineering solution to everything, and I think that there is an economical way of doing this.
Okay. Fair enough.
Before I
am no longer here to say, I think there was, if I'm remembering, something about a retaining wall that needed to be put in, and that was actually gonna be pushed up towards $1 million. I remember this was just one of those, they came back with a number and was
But
like.
where was
what?
that retaining wall?
It
Was
was-
that down along the road?
Yeah,
See, I'm not talking about down along the road.
you're talking about staying up much
I'm
higher.
up higher, yeah.
But even that would require a wall, right? It's not, it's
No, it's wide. It's really wide.
not at the other, not at the far end, it's not.
No, but at the far end, you would curve around.
You still would have to have a wall there, you'd still have to.
I don't think so.
Well, anyway, this is where we can go look at it again and.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So COSA conference,
Oh, yeah.
how was it?
It was great. It was 2 months ago, so, I haven't been here since. It is a really awesome opportunity. It is, if you want to go next year, definitely try and find the ability to go. So I spent the majority of my time going to tracks that had to do with outdoor education. My background is in education, so that's just kind of where I found my interest, and that's kind of where I started to think about what we are doing as a committee. Now, this was 2 months ago, where we weren't pushing aggressively to acquire land, so it felt like this is a good opportunity. I still think we have the opportunity to bring different types of education, even with volunteers in the area. Just for, whether it's for kids, whether it's for, middle adults, aging adults, whatever it is, I think we need to be thinking about, there is only so much land in Superior as we've found that we can acquire or that will ever come up, and what else can we do to make sure that open space gets conserved. And part of that is through creating stewards, and that's through working with youth and working with all people that are willing to work. So that's kind of what I've been putting together in my head for the last 2 months, which we'll talk about more in January. But lots of really cool stuff. I think Boulder County has a lot that we can not steal from them, but definitely look at what they're doing and decide, does that work in our smaller community? So I think that's about it.
Did you make any valuable contacts?
It was 2 months ago. Not actually with Boulder County, some of the park rangers that actually do stuff like the forest bathing stuff. I think those are people that would be really excellent to be reaching out to if those are the types of things that we want to do, especially once we have, I believe that there's supposed to be some sort of river walk specifically designed this direction, doing that sort of stuff that way. There was also another couple. There was one woman that was she's a ranger through Boulder, and then she works with another gentleman, and I have this all written down somewhere, talking specifically about really getting those designing parks, which obviously we're not the Parks Committee, but designing parks so that it is replicating natural experiences for kids.
And I think that's one of the things that everybody's been talking about also for what you're talking about over here.
Yeah. And it was really, really cool to see. And they're like, we need to touch base. I'm like, yes, we do, because we need to learn more about that as all of that gets developed a little bit more. And they spoke about some specific areas where this is done. And we are such a family based community that it's hard to just, for me, it's hard to just commit to just doing like one shot a month education programs. I think there's a lot of opportunity for ongoing opportunities to get our people to be more stewards for the land. So
Sounds awesome.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for sending me.
This last one was just an interesting piece I picked out of, I don't remember if it was a board meeting or where it was, but that they were talking about the costs of track. Actually, Ken, I think you went up and gave public comment about tract A and H coming out of open space funds, and that the comment back was that those costs were eligible for reimbursement from the TIF on downtown Superior back to the open space fund. So when they say it's eligible, I don't know what that means, if it's, we just need to submit it and we get it back, or there'll be a bunch of things that get submitted and then they'll pick which ones get back, but there is a chance that we get that money back into our open space fund. So, if things go well this year, it'd be nice if we get that sooner rather than later, but it'd be good. The other question I had around that though is for the river reconstruction, would that be the same kind of cost coming out of open space that might be reimbursable through that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So how does that process, do we need to be watching this, or how, like, who will advocate that that comes back?
I think Paul said with the Tract H stuff, he was just we're gonna submit it all.
Yeah.
And basically insist on getting repaid. So I haven't heard anything about the Coal Creek enhancements coming out and getting funded, but that's something to look into. I don't think it I don't know. I just don't know one way or the other, so I don't want to speculate.
So we
Can look into it.
Okay, awesome. So that was good news. You know, we'll get some money back, hopefully. So, okay, standing updates.
It was like 800K too, so.
Wildlife enhancements and encouragement activities. I mean, we have a separate line item now for the Raptor program.
I said that might be something to just plain take off of
Yeah,
the
I think
standing
so.
updates.
Yep. Okay. Joel, what do you want to tell us about the Rocky Mountain Greenway?
Boy, there's no real news. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion with drilling in Superior, near Superior, that would go underneath Rocky Flats. That's ongoing. I think we're all pretty well versed on that, just from the news flashes that have been coming out all week long. I did have a chance to kind of check out the potential connection with the Rocky Mountain Greenway and the Rocky Flats trails. Those are still in development, but it's currently planned for a overhead bridge over Indiana from the east to the west. I did ride by the Rocky Flats northern entrance, which is off 128, probably about a half mile to the west of McCaslin.
You gotta really be looking for it.
I agree, yeah. Don't get in a wreck looking for it.
They've got a kind of a parking lot, fences up, porta potty, but not a lot of traffic. The day I rode through there, I saw one car and it was strictly in the parking lot. The trails are not what I would consider trails, are really mowed paths, which vehicles have driven on, which I think is probably a good thing. And then the only other thing I have is I sent out, I think I sent it out to everybody, the standing update. It was a massive packet. I'm still trying to digest a lot of that because there's kind of back and forth letters from one organization to the other, and it was a couple hundred pages, I believe, the PDF. So if anybody sees anything in there that I've glossed over, certainly respond back to the group. But like I said, interesting time around Rocky Flats. Who knew that it would be this active?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, Shan Shan Trailhead, I think we covered that one in depth. I don't think we need any updates there. Raptor program.
It's going really well. It's a small group of people, but I got a new volunteer just yesterday.
Okay.
So,
Nice.
basically, I feel like it's doing what we wanted to do. We're keeping track of the nest site and the red tails over by Autry with the construction going on. We're watching that nest near the Shan Shan Trailhead that's going to go in on McCaslin. We are seeing red-tailed hawks, northern harriers, bald eagle regularly is at the Shan Shan Trailhead area where that's going to go in. 2 Cooper's hawks down by Community Park. So there's a lot of activity, a lot that we're watching, and it's really exciting.
Nice.
Did you want us, we do our Parks, Rec, and Open Space newsletter, and we've done the one for November and December, which we've kind of combined because our offerings are a little bit lower. But our next one would go out in January. Did you want any material in one of our newsletters to call for volunteers?
Sure. I think that'd be great.
If you want to, maybe write a little
Okay.
3 or 4 sentence blurb, and I can make sure that, maybe with how you would like people to contact you, and then we
Okay.
can put that in the next newsletter, which we would probably have to have complete before Christmas break sometime.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great. And then Trust for Public Lands. So Tracy, any standing updates there? I mean, we talked about the one meeting, but anything else?
No, I heard from Justin yesterday, I think, and he said, he heard back from his contact, but his contact needed 2 more weeks.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll hear soon.
Good. Well, like everyone said, hopefully these recent events maybe have shaken something loose there. We'll
That's
see.
why I touched base with him, because I sent that stuff to Superior, and he was quite surprised
Okay.
about all of this.
Is there any indication that we have the wrong contacts over there, or do we have the right contacts and we're just waiting for responses?
No, we have the right contacts.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it. So let's call it a night. That was a long one, but thank you for everyone's patience. And Ken, you are officially excused.
I resign.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone.